It says we're live on YouTube. Okay, this is the Camden Select Board meeting for December 15, 2020. We will begin our agenda tonight with, I believe we have two, correct me if I'm wrong, Janice, public input items. One, I will receive a letter to be read into the record from Dr. Jonathan Beitler, a Camden resident. The title of the document is Transparency in Camden Assessing Practices. And I quote, since the town residents are assessed payments to the county and school board based on total town assessments, over-assessment hurts our town. The town assessor excluded 177 sales, approximately 50% of the eligible sales during the latest statistical update of sales from April 1, 2015 through March 31st, 2017. There's 4 questions he submitted. One, why do we exclude bank sales? The bank is testing the market value of the property and trying, like all sellers, to maximize receipts. 2, why do you exclude partial sales? The reduced property is presumably worth less and defines the market. Why exclude estate sales like the banks? The sellers are trying to maximize receipts and take what the market decides the property's worth. And lastly, the 4th question, why exclude land sales with a new home? The property is presumably worth more and the sales define the market. Thank you for submitting that, Jonathan. Certainly food for thought in the complicated equation of tax assessment versus how and what it is is certainly a discussion that the entire nation is involved in. It was my background. This is what drove the state of California to go down a different road completely because of the complications. Food for thought, we need to continue thinking about these conundrums. They are important as we affect our fiduciary responsibility to the town, and will be subject, I'm sure, of future discussions. Thank you. To item 2, I believe, Audrey told me that I believe our gang from the Snow Bowl wants to make an announcement. Is that correct?
First, you need to approve your minutes from December 1st.
Well, thank you. Okay, item number 2, approval of minutes from, I thought you wanted public input on agenda items. You wanted to have Holly speak to us.
Yes, sorry, I forgot about that. Holly wanted to talk about the status of this year's Toboggan Nationals event. Thank you, Bob.
That's all right. I get confused very easily. Holly, did you want to start something?
Sure. So basically, the big news is that the event has been postponed. The 31st annual Toboggan Nationals will be postponed to 2022. The committee had been meeting over the last few months, trying to come up with a plan. We thought we had a pretty good plan until everything in the state, the cases started spiking. We've been waiting for a couple weeks to make a final decision, and since things have not gotten any better, and we don't foresee anything happening, in a real positive trend quick enough to be able to pull this off, we've decided to postpone the 31st annual until February 11th, 12th, and 13th of 2022.
And it's not good news, obviously. Any questions, anybody? Allison?
What a disappointment. Would you mind just elaborating a little bit more on some of the reasons why, and what was considered, and what maybe some of the plans you had in the works to cope with it, and why that won't work now?
Yeah, absolutely. We had talked about, normally this event has 425 teams and up to about 1,300 individual racers. And on top of that, we've got probably 3,000 to 4,000 spectators, potentially on Saturday, and then a couple thousand on Sunday when the weather is really nice. And while so the plan that we had come up with was to cut the number of teams in half and have 200 teams. And instead of having 2, 3, and 4-person teams, only have 2-person teams, which would give us a total of 400 racers on site. We were also going to, since each of these, we were going to put 20 to 25 teams in a pod, because the state's recommendation has been to work in pods of no more than 50 people for an outdoor event. And then we were going to schedule the time for each pod to take their 2 runs. So for example, pod number 1, which would be race teams number 1 through 25, would take their 2 runs between 8 and 9 on Saturday morning. Pod number 2 would go between 9 and 10, etc. And then we were going to have, just to finish the race format, the top 50 times on Sunday would be in the finals, and we would run the finals, 2 runs per team, per those 50 teams. We were going to not allow spectators because that's an entity that we thought we would just really not be able to control very well. And to maintain sort of those safe distances, and it would just be so much manpower to try to chase after people. There was just no way. But even with the number of, with the 400 teams on, or 400 racers on site, it would still mean quite a bit of manpower to manage those people, make sure that they're not congregating in groups of even 4 or 6 people might be problematic in a parking space. That, along with the fact that when you've got that few racers at $35 per racer, the numbers just didn't add up to really make it worthwhile. And then of course, the other thing is that last week, I had emailed Carol Ann Olette, who is, she's the outdoor recreation director with Department of Economic Development at the state. I had emailed her and said, listen, here's the plan. I know that things are getting, that cases have been spiking quite a bit. Can you just give us an up or down? And I also then, Vicky Dudera, our state rep, chimed in as well and forwarded an email to her and said, hey, I'm willing to help make this happen, whatever it takes. To be honest, there was I didn't hear a thing from Carol Ann, and I imagine that given the sheer numbers of cases that are happening, it was just problematic for her to even get back to us. And I was going to the state because I figured that if we get their blessing, then it would be a lot easier for you all to consider even what we were thinking about doing. But it just seemed just too many insurmountable issues that we'd have to deal with, and in terms of the spectators, and we don't have jurisdiction over the pond, and so people can really come onto the pond and cross it when it's solid ice, really at any point that they really want to, and so trying to then manage that and remove people, it wasn't going to be worth it. So.
Okay, well, thank you. That's it's definitely helpful to hear the kind of the thought process that went into it, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yep.
We don't want to shoot the bearer of bad news, but thanks, Holly. Thanks for letting us know.
Is the toboggan chute still going to be open some this winter?
As soon as conditions warrant it, as soon as the pond freezes up, Stuart is anxious and he has a plan for spacing people out, very similar to what we did for chairlift rides this fall. He's ready and raring to go.
Great. Thanks, Holly.
Going on to item 3 now, item 2, the approval of the board minutes from December 1st, 2020. Any comments on the meeting minutes, board?
I have no comments. I've gone through them quickly, not with a fine-tooth comb, and I have no problem. So I'll make a motion to okay them unless there's other discussion.
I would second that.
Okay, discussion, roll call vote. Taylor?
I was absent, Bob, so I'll abstain.
Good point. Thank you. Allison,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Bob, aye. Also 3-0. Thank you. Item 3, introducing new promoted members of our illustrious and famous Camden Police Department. I presume, Chief, you want to introduce us and discuss Officers Beliak and Butler?
Sure. Thank you for giving us this time tonight. As we usually do it, we do badge pinnings, but because of COVID, we haven't been able to have a meeting where we could all get together. So we thought at least some introductions. Brian Lunt was on to be introduced tonight. Unfortunately for us, he has informed me that he is in the final process for a position with the Brewer Police Department that is going to allow him to pursue some of his end of career ambitions that he'd like to do. And we wish him luck on that. He's given us some good service for the 6 months he's been with us, but that's the way it goes sometime. Tonight, Wes Butler is with us. Wes has been with us since 2013. Was a patrol officer. Prior to coming to the police department, he had worked with the Knox County Sheriff's Department and the Rockport Police Department. He's a graduate of Unity College with a bachelor's degree in conservation law enforcement. Wes went through a competitive sergeant's process along with Sergeant Alan Weaver when John Tooley retired. It was the closest sergeant's position exam I had ever administered or been part of, which was a very good competition between the both of them. Dan Brown retired in June, and we train all of our senior patrol officers in management at management level. So when we have an opening, they are ready to go right into that position. We train them before we promote them, which is, reduces liability. It also teaches our senior patrol officers to start thinking like supervisors at an early stage. I'll introduce Lucas Verrier next. Lucas was a member of the United States Marine Corps, comes to us from the Knox County Corrections Center. Lucas joined us back in, I believe it was February of this year, just around the same time COVID hit. So he had originally come to work for us to take the parking position. And when we saw that we weren't going to be writing many parking tickets, there was a patrol opening, and Lucas tested for that and was successful. So we moved him right into the patrol position. When and if we get another academy going, he will have to attend that along with Scott Entwistle. And I also have an officer in Rockport who will need to attend. I'm hoping all three of them can attend the academy together. I would invite Wes, if he'd like to introduce himself or say anything else, to go ahead.
Wes, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
It's
Yes.
still a little low.
Speak loud.
Yeah.
Basically, I'd like to thank my chief for allowing me to take this position, and I don't know, there's really not too much to say. I'm learning every day and striving to do the best I can for the town.
Lucas,
I have a quick question for Wes. Wes, last year when you were in the meeting, you talked about how you like working nights because that's where all the action is. Are you going to continue nights, or do you have to suffer now during the day?
So
yeah.
as a supervisor, we tend to work the mid shift, which is a little bit of the afternoon and into the night. But with COVID going on, it's been slower at times. So working some of the mid shifts has been a nice change.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? How's this process working? Is that okay?
Randy, did you finish with your presentation?
I have. I was just going to give Lucas the opportunity. However your meeting, Bob, you run it however you'd like.
I'd like to hear from Lucas, then I'll jump to Allison.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The stage is yours, Lucas.
Lucas, your volume must be down or something. I can't hear you.
hear me now?
Getting there, getting there.
Move closer to the screen a little bit. How about now? Is that a little bit better?
Yes, speak loudly.
All right. Well, I'm Lucas Verrier. I came here back in February with the hope to become a patrolman. I'm very thankful to have learned from some of the best, in my opinion. A lot of the senior guys here took me under their wing and taught me what they know, and I'm continuing to learn every single day. I'm living the night shift life. It's at times boring, especially in the COVID, but it gives me the time to study and learn and practice what I've been taught. And I'm just very thankful to be here.
Thank you, Lucas. Allison, you had a question or a statement you want to make?
Well, first of all, welcome, Lucas, and congratulations, Wes. I'd be eager to get to chat with you, Lucas, but I feel so lucky to have you, Wes. You've just been extraordinary on so many different things. And I was just hoping maybe you could tell us really quickly what this conservation law enforcement, is that the kind of like environmental conservation? Or is there a different kind of conservation law enforcement that?
So it was mostly designed, Unity, to more or less be for like Marine Patrol or the Warden Service, as in conservation for animals, along that aspect. But there was some other environmental classes that I had taken during schooling. So I haven't really used that much since getting into law enforcement, but it's something that I enjoy doing. So.
Careful, Wes, you're getting drafted, I can tell.
I mean, it's just so exciting to hear that such a thing exists and that we have somebody with a specialty in that. So I think what a lot of people sometimes don't realize is that, our police department has a really diverse range of backgrounds and skills, and that it, doesn't all just revolve around law enforcement. So I know I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to chat with some of them, and hopefully we can figure out how to put that conservation law training to work a little bit.
If I may, we also have a marine biologist on staff.
Right, that's another one. I mean, there are so many possibilities.
Thank you. Obviously, we're all.
I just wanted to welcome Lucas as well. Lucas, welcome. And I'm glad you get Wes's hot shift at night now, and hopefully he can show you some of the hot spots around town.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all, and we're all very, very, very proud of our illustrious police department. Guys are doing a great job. Again, to you too, welcome on board, Lucas, and Wes, thanks for your continuing efforts. And thank you, Chief, for bringing him to the table. I'm sorry you couldn't be here in person. Maybe next time. The next promotion.
We'll get together at some point.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that's good evening. Next, we would like us to convene as wastewater commissioners briefly. If I can have a motion to do so, please.
I make a motion we can adjourn as select board and convene as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Taylor.
Aye.
Jenna. Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And Bob. 4-0, yes. And we have as wastewater commissioners, we have the action to award of a bid to Apex Construction for the wastewater treatment plant redesign and rebuild. Audrey, Dave, do you want to make any comments to the bid packages which we have in our packet? We have the comparisons in our packet. It looks like the Apex was the low bidder of the three.
Yeah, so this was a pleasant surprise and very good news. Wright Pierce did a pretty good job summarizing the results of the bid, but it was the low bid was 14% lower than what we had initially expected, which is wonderful news because there was a point in time where I think we're all concerned that we were going to end up with bids that were higher than expected. So I think that we were very fortunate for when this project went out and what we received back. So as part of this process, since we're receiving a grant and a loan from USDA, once we receive bids, they have to review everything and approve them as well. So that has already been done. and you're sort of receiving the final packet where everything's been analyzed. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Dave Bolstrich would be more than happy to answer them. Just to add, Apex has done work for the town of Camden before, so they are familiar with the plan.
Okay, any questions from the board? Mark?
I thought the packet that, or the discussion that Wright Pierce in discussing the contract was excellent. And so in that case, for once, I don't think I have any questions for Dave about what he thinks, because it's pretty obvious. It's a great proposal and a great bid.
Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, I would second that. What Ray Pierce put together was really excellent. I really enjoyed reading that, and what great news. And way to go, Dave, that this came in so under budget. I mean, of course, it could always turn out, we don't know how it might turn out in the end, but it really speaks to what a great job you've done. And I guess one quick question is, since there's been so much construction going on in town, and we've gotten started a little bit with that force main on Commercial Street, which was great to be able to get done. When should we expect like the next round of disruption for the downtown businesses, if any?
This package does not include the force mains. This package only includes the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, fine. But we already started with some of the force mains. So since we have Dave here, do you want me to just wait?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't have to. Are we going to talk about that on a different day?
Oh, Dave wants to ask the question. Well, go ahead, Dave.
Yes, we're right now we're still pulling the package together for the force main. We're very close to having that done. That's gone to rural development for their approval. Kind of hoping we can put the force main in this spring, and that could, go into May before we get it all finished. But we do still have a couple of hurdles to jump over, so I can't guarantee that we'll start it this spring. If we can't start it this spring, then we'll go ahead and schedule a fall installation. We're going to stay away from the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what just went in on Commercial Street is not a force main?
That is part of that system, yes.
Okay.
And here again, it was taking advantage of Ranger being right there. So they didn't have to mobilize, so it'd save us quite a bit of money. Probably 15% less than what we would have paid if, went out for bid on that section. And if they weren't right there. We're just taking advantage of that. And so that piece will be done. And then there's one more little piece that goes from a new manhole that we put in at the bottom of the Commercial Street, right in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's going to be a little bit of construction from there to the inlet of the Bayview pump station. But, fortunately, Commercial Street won't be a bottleneck like it is right now. So that we took advantage of that.
Okay, so, but on Main, does it have to go in on Main Street as well, or is all the Main Street stuff as it needs to be?
No, there is still a little bit of work we'll have to do on Main Street as well. The force main will go overland on Lyman Morris property over to Atlantic Street. Then we're going to put a new pipe on Atlantic Street, dedicated pipe. And then we're going to go on to Main Street from the library to just across the river. And after that, the pipe has been lined. Remember, we lined that a couple of years ago, and it's large enough for the flow, so we don't have to tear up the road any further than that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would just say that maybe coordinating with it, figuring out whether the spring or the fall, some of the businesses there have just been so hard hit, and I think all of us are probably getting peppered with questions. I know I am. So anything that we could do to try to talk to, if it's a choice between spring or fall, or just make sure that we're really kind of keeping them in the loop so that they can plan.
Yes, yeah, it's, I hate to go back out on Main Street again, but fortunately, it's just a very short section, so it should be done fairly quickly.
And fortunately, it's the section that's not in front of a lot of the businesses.
Right.
That section is, the section where, the businesses start on that side of Main Street. That's where the pipe was lined.
Great. Dave, just one question for clarity. It's no big deal, but thank God these came in. I would have expected like 20% over budget, but with this bid, with a 5% contingency, basically puts the treatment plant on budget, total cost, correct?
Yes, yeah, very, very happy with this bid. I think it was great timing when we went out for bid, because these companies were looking for work for this coming spring.
Mm-hmm.
The project will start in March. We'll start construction in March. And yes, I'm very happy. We've got some other pieces that we want to do. The two other pump stations, for example, and of course the force main. And I think there's a good chance that we'll be able to do both pump stations and still be within budget because of this bid.
Well, this bid put us on budget in the treatment plant, correct?
Right. Yeah, there are three different projects: the treatment plant upgrade, the force main replacement, and
Right.
two.
But comparing apples and apples, treatment plant to treatment plant, the budget and the numbers that in total, including design, are on budget. They're not.
Right.
Oh, hold on, then how?
If you look at there's a sheet in there that compares actual budget in our packet, actual budget including design, which is a $12 million number for the waste treatment plant. You have to add that to the construction cost of $9.5 million. And now included, thanks to it coming in below budget, with a 5% construction contingency, Wright Pierce put in, which is appropriate. The total budget for the waste treatment, total number now for the waste treatment plant is $12.2 million. The total budget is $12.3 million. So they're less than 1% difference, which is good. It's not a bad thing. It's just a fact. It's just a fact of numbers.
I'm just having a hard time understanding why the Wright Pierce memo said that it was 14% under budget, the lowest bid.
All I can tell you is in the numbers they provided, that with the 9.5 million of Apex plus the 5% contingency, that's the difference, I believe. And that's in the number, which is a good thing. I mean, this is not bad. You have to have some contingency. 5% you could debate may not be enough. I think it is. But the numbers with the contingency bring us, we're on budget the waste treatment plant. So the budget that remains for the force mains, Dave, still whatever that is, $2 million, whatever, $3 million, whatever it is still yet to be seen. Correct?
Right. That's right. Yes.
That's a little bit over my head. I'm not quite understanding how we can be, Wright Pierce says we're 14% under budget. But I mean,
it's good news. Against the construction market today, it's really very good.
Oh, I mean, it's great. It just doesn't sound, the way you're putting it doesn't sound nearly as good as the way it was put in the memo.
I don't like, yeah, and that's my point. The good news is we're on budget and we're not ahead of budget. I want to make that clear.
Okay.
Because you have to add the expenditure of design, which I'm thinking, Dave was a couple $1 million, whatever it is, whatever the number is. And it has a contingency of almost $500,000 in that number, in the Wright Pierce number. It's a good thing because you're going to need change orders on something, Dave. You know something's going to happen. It's going to require some additional costs somewhere during construction. So it's
guaranteed there'll be a few change orders. Yes.
The project net for the treatment plant is on budget. That's good news.
Yes.
So with that, any other comments, select board? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the, hold on, let me get the right spot. We approve the bid from Apex Construction for, what is it? I'm looking for the final number here.
Sure.
Total bid $9,542,755, $9,542,750.
Second.
Do we have any discussion, select board members? Not hearing any, roll call vote. Taylor?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Bob, I also. Good job, gang. Keep it on budget, David. Do a good job.
That's our goal. Thank you.
You bet. Good night.
Good night.
Now the select board, I'd like to reconvene as a select board again.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn as wastewater commissioners and reconvene as the select board.
Second.
Roll call vote. Allison?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Bob, aye. 4-0. Thank you. Then, as select board members, we have one public hearing on the renewal liquor application for the waterfront restaurant at 48 Bayview Street. Again, as we have in the past meetings, when we've had a public hearing, I've stated that typically a public hearing is an opportunity for the public to provide input on the matter at hand to the select board for their input and consideration during the application. But since we have no public input submitted or in present, I will close the public hearing portion and revert to select board decision.
I move that we approve the waterfront restaurant at 48 Bayview Street for renewal liquor license.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mark?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
And Bob, aye. 4-0. Thank you very much. Now to our list of action items. Item 5, we have the first item is the approval of the FY 2021 Snow Bowl concession license agreement. Barbara, who do you want to lead the discussion on that?
Beth can talk about it, but I think all of you remember going through this process over the past few years. This is just a renewal of the same agreement that we have with Mark from year to year. There are, of course, going to be some changes in how he has to operate this year, but it's virtually the same agreement that you're all familiar with from the past years. Beth, do you have anything to add to that at all?
No, nothing. Just like Audra said, it's pretty much the same year after year. Mark is going to change up how he's doing business a little bit, but he's here and he can probably speak to that if you guys have questions for him.
I'd be curious to know what those changes are.
Mark, why don't you give us a brief update on any significant changes? This is not related to the contract, I presume, but rather to operations.
Correct. Yeah, I'm going to start off in the food trailer out in the parking lot. A little bit of a limited menu and kind of go from there and see how it goes.
Cool.
And then eventually move into the lodge, but I really want to start there first, make it simple, make it easy, and have everyone figure it out, and then we can go into the lodge and cohabitate.
Sounds good. Any other questions, select board? We have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Snowball concession agreement, and I just wanted to thank Mark for sticking with it in difficult times and doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Just another quick one. I'm not going to be selling beer or wine this year. I just find it to be unable to be done correctly, and we can wait till next year.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Do I have a second on the other Mark's motion?
Second.
All right. Any more further discussion? Not hearing any, go for roll call vote. Allison?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Bob, aye. 4-0. Thank you for that one. Good. Keep going, Mark. Senders.
Thank you so much, guys. Good night.
The second item we have is related. It's a approval of the Mark Senders doing business as the Big T Snack Shop for the renewal of his Bittler license at 20 Barnstown Road. Any comments on the application for the Bittler license here?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Big T Snack Shop Victular license.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion, roll call vote. Taylor?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Mark?
I thought it was a good idea to prove it if we wanted him to actually serve the food. We just agreed to have him serve.
I agree. Bob, I also, thanks, Mark Sanders. Keep up the good work, bud.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks,
Take
Mark.
care. Good night. Well, the third item we have is the discussion or action on the appointment of new planning board members. Jeremy, are you leading a discussion, or Audra?
Sure, I can, Bob, if you'd like. Audra?
Yes, please. I believe you have some. Please give us the status of the planning board today.
Yeah.
Just the applicants who received.
Sure. Sure. So the planning board is made up of 7 members, 5 full-time members and 2 alternates. We have currently 2 alternate positions open, in addition to a regular member open, as Jeff Senders is just coming off. He had intended to be off of the board earlier this summer, but due to COVID and just a number of projects that were currently being reviewed, and Jeff stayed on to see those projects through review. He's now stepped off the board, so we have 3 openings, 1 regular and 2 alternates. We have in your agenda 3 folks that have submitted applications to be on the board. Andrew Smith, Licia Morelli, and Pat Chen. I've had a couple of conversations. I had a couple of conversations with Andrew, and I did chat with Pat briefly. And that's who we have. I mean, we got a slate of 3 right now that are open. We do need to fill that board. And from my perspective, it's good to have a well-rounded group on the board. You know, you're not going to find planners and engineers and architects and designers to be on these boards, or lawyers to be on the board all the time. And so I think it is good to have a well-rounded, groups from the, folks from the community to sit on the board. And I think we have that right now, and we have 3 in front of you that would like to be on the board. And there you go.
Jeremy, can I ask a question?
You
We have 1 spot for a full member and 2 alternate spots. And looking at the applications, Andrew and Pat seem to have more experience. So I thought one of those should be the permanent member. Do you have a preference about which one you think may be more experienced? I know Pat has been on a prior planning board in Wells, Maine, right?
Yeah.
But Andrew has a wealth of experience as well worldwide. So I was just curious, more experience than our 3rd candidate. So I was just.
Yeah, no, I get that, Mark. I'm going to leave that to you guys entirely. I mean, I think you got to base it really on what they submitted to you and what's right. I mean, right now currently we have Rosie Curtis as the planning board chair. We have Mark Siegenthaler, who's been on the board for a number of years. Matt Siegel, who's relatively new. Ethan Shaw, who's relatively new. And that's who we have. And so, I think we have a good group right now. I hate to see Jeff Senders go, but it's up to you. It's up to you folks. Everyone that is on that board brings something to the table. It doesn't matter if they're an alternate or a full-time member, to be honest with you, Mark. I think the board listens to everyone that's on the board. And ultimately 5 vote on a project. We are in a small town. I've yet to have someone have a conflict of interest, though that does happen from time to time. So every now and again, someone may have to step off the board off of a certain project, but go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Allison. Sorry.
So what I'm ultimately going to advocate for tonight is that we table the final decision until next time. Not because of any applicant in particular, but mostly because in observing the planning board and the select board over the years, it feels like we often don't fully understand how important the planning board is and how intertwined their work is with the work of the select board and goal setting. And given the fact that we have recently tasked the planning board with a few really important things like reevaluating the harbor business district and shoreland zoning and protecting working waterfront, in addition to other, long held town goals, such as, reducing minimum lot sizes and facilitating affordable housing and urban density and all of these things that are, in our comprehensive plan, energy reduction, green building practices, all of those things. It often feels like the application that we give to people for the planning board is, it's just that sort of generic one that we give to all the committees. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. But I think we would really be doing a disservice to the community if we don't spend a little bit more time making sure that the people that we appoint are kind of interested in tackling some of the same issues, and also that, at least somebody is able to take on Jeff's role, sort of with the environmental knowledge. And so I personally would just like to take a little bit more time. I was also intrigued by the fact that we have a lot of people with interest in serving on the energy committee and, different conservation related things. And so we seem to have so many people who have community experience and a real interest in working in the area of energy, but then we're not getting any of those. Well, we may end up by luck with some of those people or some people with shared interests on the planning board, but we're not going about it in really a thoughtful way. I would maybe love to see, since we have too many people really that want to be on the energy committee right now, is there an opportunity to say, hey, energy committee, you've had all this energy to work on these types of things. We really need some of that energy toward sustainable town goals to be on the planning board, because the planning board is tasked with, ordinance development and possibly some comprehensive plan updating and some things that we really need to work on. So I would just like to dig in a little bit more. I had a really long talk with Anita today as the chair of the Energy Committee, just to say, hey, are you sure one of you guys might not be up for this challenge? So if this isn't anything against, I would just like to also take the time to ask a few more questions of the people who are interested, just so that we make sure we're all kind of working together and that everybody's in a role that is going to make sense.
Taylor, Jeremy, go ahead.
I just want you to know, right now, we don't have any projects that are waiting in the wings to be reviewed by the planning board. So if you do want to wait, and try to keep this open, I'm from a planning perspective, I'm okay right now. Jeff Senders is on. He will be getting off, and then we're going to have a problem. But right now we have no pending projects or applications. So I think if you want to take some time, a little bit of time, that's fine. And I think it's appropriate, Allison.
Taylor, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I agree. That makes perfect sense to me. I think if we want to take a beat for the next meeting or two, that seems to make a lot of sense.
Okay. Just a procedural question. Good to know we're not in a rush, but is it, maybe you can answer it, isn't there a special form for application to the planning board?
Yes, Janice was kind of pointing that out to everyone. So maybe that's kind of the first thing that we can do, is everybody who has expressed an interest, we can send them out that form, because I think that would give you a little bit more information heading into all of this.
Great.
Great idea.
Well,
thank you for showing up. And,
yeah.
and your application looked like, wow, you know a lot about this stuff, and we would be lucky to have you. It's so this isn't a commentary on your competence or anything of that nature.
Table this. I want to be sure we get this on the agenda for January 5th, which is our next meeting, in the new year. Because we can go on. I totally agree. I think it's a good idea. I think historically, everybody, the committees, boards, we don't have enough knowledge to really, other than rubber stamp and exaggerate a little bit, to rubber stamp positions. And that's really not fair, especially the planning board and a few others that are extremely critical to the town. But the three applicants we have right now are very solid applicants. The opportunity to speak at length with one of them, I'm very impressed, but I think we could do a little more homework between now and the 5th. And we could use, Audra, the forms that we have, and I don't have that, to get that to them. So they could please get it back to us in advance of the January 5th meeting. So with that, motion to, Austin, want to say something else?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I would also just say that what I found is people don't realize what the planning board does. And so it doesn't, when people are like, I want to get involved in, making a difference in town government, they're not attracted naturally to the planning board unless, things like charter commission, planning board don't, they look at the names and they say, well, I'm really, an expert in energy and, community sustainability or this or that. And they don't realize you don't need to have been on a planning board before. You don't need to be an architect. A lot of this stuff can be learned, and we need to figure out a way of doing a better job incorporating these like widely held town goals into our planning documents and our zoning ordinance. And so sometimes I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of push people that we recognize have these skills and push them toward this this part of town government.
Thanks, Allison. Do I have Andy? You want to say something? Wait a second, Andy. I had you muted. Sorry.
Hi. Good evening.
Hi, Andy.
Hi. Yeah. No, Allison. I appreciate your comments, and my interpretation of the role was more kind of doing objective reviews of projects. People that are trying to get projects approved by the town, looking at them and looking at the zoning and the ordinances and, really just looking for compliance. I thought it was more kind of an objective review role of projects coming through rather than, trying to influence or plan or in any specific way, if that makes sense.
I mean, there are two aspects of it. There's that site plan review part, which is like what you're, exactly what you're saying. It's really just reviewing for compliance with the ordinance. But then there's the town planning portion of it, which is, recommending new ordinances and looking for consistency with comprehensive plan and that kind of stuff. So.
Okay.
With that, do I have a motion to table this agenda item to our January 5th meeting?
Motion so moved to table until January 5th. And Andrew, please stay interested until January 5th.
I live right on Mountain Street and I'm not going anywhere. So thank you and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks.
So I have a
Bye.
second for Mark.
Second.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Discussion, roll call vote, Taylor.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
And Bob, aye. Thank you very much. The next item is the approval of the Siemens project plan. Let's see. Make sure nobody's Colleen and Elmer is here also. The last time we had a discussion of the program, and we wound up with a discussion about the various three options that were listed. Danny, is there an update on that? I understand Dave Celeron had made a minor change to.
Yeah. I mean, well, good evening, everyone, by the way. The only thing that's changed is the roof. The roof added a little bit of cost because the quote that we had originally gotten didn't have all of the cost for the roof or the scaffolding and a bunch of different things. But we are nailing that down right now. We actually got a good number. And going forward, as you know, because this is different from a bond and a planned spec approach. Once we nail this down, there's no change orders. So we had to really make sure that the roofing company was confident in what they were giving us for numbers. So, but yeah, that's the only thing that changed was just on the roofing side, just the cost.
Do you have an idea of what that would change
Yeah, it changes the contribution side of the town to 86,000 a year now versus the 79, I believe, is what we had on the last one. So, but so the option 1 went up to the 86. The option 2 that took out the roof obviously didn't change at all. And then the option 3 went up again if you were to keep the roof in and remove the geothermal at the snowball.
And the reduction of option 3 would be similarly a $5,000 or $6,000 number.
Yeah, exactly. It went up to 53,000 as a contribution. So it went up almost exactly the same as the first one.
Okay. Okay, the clear difference, just to remind everybody, the 3 options. Option 1 had all the project stuff in there, including the geothermal, the roof. And then in option 2, as I recall, the only thing that was being removed was the roof work. And option 3 had in the roof, but no geothermal.
Right, taking the geothermal out and doing replacing the boiler that's.
Yeah, boiler and a heat pump.
Yep.
Option 3. So those are the big differences there. Mark, go ahead.
In taking from the discussion that Allison just had about the planning board, I'm interested in option 1 because I am very interested. One, I think the roof needs replacing. We need to do it at some point, so it's a realistic cost, but it needs to be done, and also will help our energy. And also doing geothermal at the Snow Bowl really goes forward what we've been doing with Global Covenant of Mayors. One of the reasons we've entered into this program so that we can save energy. It's not just a financial program, an infrastructure program. It's also an energy program. So I'm in support of option 1.
Other comments? I think, Allison, please go ahead, and then Taylor.
What? How about Taylor goes first?
Okay, Taylor.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree on option 1 as well. I mean, I think when you really look at the difference between the 3 options, we're not talking about a massive amount of money, but I think that the thing that does it for me in option 1 is just what Mark said. I think that planning ahead at the Snow Bowl for geothermal heating and cooling makes sense. The one question and sort of maybe concern that I have is that, are we prepared for the buildings changing at the Snow Bowl? Is the geothermal heating and cooling system going to be adaptable enough or planned ahead enough so that if, the Snow Bowl changes how it operates, or an addition or remodeling or a whole new building goes in a number of years, is that something that we'd be prepared for? So that's my only question on option 1. But other than that, it makes a lot of sense to me. And there's actually a lot of items in option 1 that just need to be done. I know the heat pumps, the public safety and public works have been failing for a number of years. So that's not just something that's an upgrade, but that has been on a list that just has to happen, among other things. So to me, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm happy to see that, the net cost when you think about the energy and operational savings is pretty minimal. And when you factor in, what we're reducing for carbon footprint is something that I think that this community has been very loud about being supportive of in the town. So to me, in that sense, it's a no-brainer.
To answer your question, Taylor, yeah, the system that we were using to design there would be set up for expansion. That's exactly what we did. So if you do put an addition onto that building, which could be something down the road, it would be expandable for that exactly.
If a new building went up out there, Danny, would it be able to be tied into that geothermal heating and cooling system as well?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Allison, then Audra. Allison, go ahead.
Well, maybe Audra.
All right, Audra, go ahead.
it might be good to hear what Allison says, because I have a suggestion or something that you might want to consider, and another thing that you're going to have to make a decision on as part of all this to bring up. So,
Right. Allison, go ahead.
I think I'd really rather hear what Audra has to say first.
sure. Well, I was just going to say that I think that with all the uncertainty around the Snow Bowl and what the future is out there, that you might want to consider breaking, and also because of the financial impact of this project. And, you know, we've talked about trying to sort of maintain a level debt to the best, you know, the best of our abilities to, you know, just make sure that from year to year, we're not having significant tax impacts. And I know with all the sort of capital investments that we need to make in town, that's not always going to be possible. But I do think that if maybe you break this project up into 2 phases, and the second phase, doing it in a couple of years, once we've had some time to kind of nail down what the plan is at the Snow Bowl, so that, you know, we actually are committing to something. You know, I just think it would be a shame to sort of make this investment in a geothermal system and really commit to that and not have a plan for the Snow Bowl and expanding so that it's able to take advantage of that investment. So I think that breaking this project into a couple of phases, giving us time to address the question of what we're doing at the Snow Bowl, so that when we get to that second phase in a couple of years, not only have we freed up some of our you know, so we've retired some debt and we freed up our financial capacity to do that sort of project. We also know what we're going to do at the Snow Bowl, so that we're not, you know, making the investment in the system out there and then not having any plan for how we're going to use it moving forward. And, you know, it just sort of makes sure that the project that we're going to be doing this year is in line with the amount of debt we have retiring roughly. And, you know, to be frank, it's already going to be, you know, a big hit in the first year, because we're not going to be seeing the energy savings from the performance contract up front in the first year. So that's something to just take into consideration for this year. It's going to be, you know, a tough budget. So I just want to make sure that we're, you know, really aware of that going into this. And also another part of this is the decision around the library and what's done with the library. So I've had a lot of conversations with Nikki, and she's spoken to the library board of trustees. They very much want to participate and make sure that what they're doing is consistent with the town and upholding, you know, the goals that we have around energy reduction. And so they would be very willing to join in this project, with the understanding that we would be cost sharing, much like we do with the entire library budget. So on a yearly basis, they would ask for about $13,000 less than they typically do, to take into consideration that half of that payment, which is a total of $26,000 a year.
Oh, they said that?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So, and just to Audra's point, just to underscore that, I believe, then you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the library building has a significant contribution to energy savings. I believe it's the largest of all of the buildings we're considering.
It's right up there, yeah. Yep.
Just underscore that, because you have the change out of, well, they got some building problems, envelope problems, they've got a controls problem on the HVAC, but they've also got a big boiler problem, which is a oil-fired boiler, which would be transitioned to a propane-fired boiler. They've got underground tank problem, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make that point. Taylor, you had your hand up.
Yeah, a couple questions. Audrey, remind me, how many years are we paying this out over now? If we went with option 1, roughly how many years would we be looking at? And 1B of that is, if we decided to split it up into 2 phases, if that's possible, do you have a proposal on how that would look, where we can try to match it up with?
Yeah, just the answer to that is, it basically, as I heard Audra, she's saying, you know, the Snow Bowl, the geothermal, which is, you know, to do that in phase 2, correct, Audra?
Yeah, and regardless of whatever option you pick tonight, it's going to be a 17-year agreement between us and Siemens.
Yep.
And I think, well, I won't say I think, no matter what, we're going to need to do a phase 2. because once a lot of the improvements are made to the Opera House building, I would assume that we're going to choose to insulate the roof. And so that would be part of a phase 2 project. Siemens is going to be doing the audit of the snowmaking system. And I'm pretty confident that they're going to find a way that we can do things better out there that would also include some phase 2 investment. And then if you look at, the snow bowl and including the potential of a geothermal system, that's all stuff that could go in a phase 2 project. And that would really be, kind of around 2 years from now would be a good time when we're retiring some additional debt to really move forward on that project. And I do think that it kind of also holds our feet to the fire with future plans for the Snow Bowl. I mean, that's been a really difficult thing to move forward, but this gives us a really good incentive to come up with a plan, stick with it, and also, move forward with some of the major, energy improvements that we could make out there if we just knew exactly what we were going to do moving forward. Because that's really the area out of any sort of facility in town where we have a real opportunity to make a significant difference.
Allison, you had your hand up, and Mark, I think too.
So for me, with the Snow Bowl, it feels like no matter what, we have to heat a building out there right now. How are we heating that right now?
It's an old oil boiler.
Right. And so even if the winter season completely collapses and we can't have a ski mountain anymore, if it becomes really warm, then our cooling needs are going to increase dramatically. There doesn't seem to be a scenario where we abandon the use of the Snow Bowl. And everybody seems to agree that we need more space out there for people just to be in any season. So having asked Bob a bunch of questions about this over the past 2 weeks, it seemed to me like what I understood was that even if we wanted to, say, put up a couple massive tents out there to allow for additional seating, that the geothermal system would be flexible enough that we could heat the big tents with that. So I guess I'm nervous about waiting because it's, the inertia of having looked at this carefully. Everybody understands it right now. I can't see a scenario where we don't have heating and cooling needs at the Snow Bowl that are for a larger building than what we have right now. But maybe somebody can help me understand just how flexible the system could be. And
yeah, Jenny, what else is driving at is if we were to build an air building out there, a big air building, you can heat and cool it with the elements of the geothermal. It's designed for something more than just what we have there now. Or if we're a building, it would do the same thing. But that's what Alice is referring to. Mark, you had a question.
I have a couple comments. Number one, I remember from the last meeting, there was a concern that we were postponing this decision for 2 weeks till now because of they need to start working, and they're based on figures that they have now. And also, second part, that right now the money is as low as it probably is going to go in terms of costs. And number three, I just lost number three. The money's low, and I lost my third point, which was, of course, was the important one. But there is it happens sometimes. I'm getting old, I guess. It seems to be that we have infrastructure that needs to be done. I agree that I think we should get it done. I think Allison's right. If we postpone things, they tend to stay postponed, and I'm concerned about that.
I think.
Oh, sorry, Bob. I remember what the third point is. The third point is we don't pay anything the first year, if I remember correctly.
No,
So-
we will be paying. So this next budget cycle, we are going to have to put the first payment, which, Denny, can you remind me of what the first payment would be for option 3?
For option 1, you mean, or option
Oh, sorry,
three?
option 1. Yes, option 1.
Well, the first payment would be just the down payment on the projects that you've already started, that you had established with the heat pumps.
Sorry, Denny, I didn't mean that. I meant the first lease purchase payment for the first year of the agreement.
So that would be in 2022, you mean?
Well, yes, 2022, but it's still FY21. It'd be like January of 2022.
Yeah, so it would be, so that first payment, I believe, Elmer, I don't
Was
have
it
those
like
numbers.
192?
Like 190, yeah, in
194 because you're paying for 2 years because you don't have the savings calculated yet for the first.
Yeah, but I will say that, I mean, I think Elmer would agree that you're going to start seeing savings, but it wouldn't be like we're guaranteeing the savings that you would see in a full year. But the first things that we get in and start doing would start generating savings throughout the year. So you would be seeing savings, but not the exact number what we would predict for a full year. That's all.
Right. All the points well made, including Audrey's.
Well, and I just want everyone to be very aware of that because I have to put that in the next budget that we're preparing.
Understood, and very valid point. I think there's two or three aspects of the options, and there is a phase 2, and in the phase 2, we absolutely should, in my opinion, have the snow making things as a priority, because right now is the time to be evaluating the snow making while the snow making is going on. So we got to, Siemens got to attack that now for a phase 2 contract. That's a given.
Yeah, it's perfect timing.
In my mind. But to Audrey's point, the difference, there's a financial side, there's a technical side. There's 2 sides. And there's a strategic side, a tactical. The strategic tactical side says, yes, if we approve option 1, it puts our feet to the fire to plan and go forward with a building or something at the snowball. That's a given, because the geothermal system is designed for more than just the current lodge. So that's the strategic side. The environmental side is, I think the geothermal changes out there, I think it was around 20 tons of carbon footprint reduction every year with the utilization of that system. Then there's the financial side. Audrey's made good points. I mean, there's a financial side to me that's kind of, doesn't like spending money. And the geothermal is, a few $100,000 in the total package. But the most important one in my mind is just know, if we go with option 1, we're committed, the town, to building something out there, because if you don't, that money is going to be wasted.
Bob, my question is, I have a question for Denny. If we took out the snowball moved the snowball to a second option, a second plan, what would the change in the cost be? Could you have any idea of that off the top of your head?
I could be wrong, but Elmer, do you know that number? I mean, because you guys have worked on the DART a little bit more. What does that number change?
Hold on, Denny. Let me do it for you.
Okay.
Well, Colleen's looking it up, because what I'm saying is we're looking at the cost. Our first payment will be $190,000, but that's not all the snowball. A lot of this we need to get done right away anyway. So I'm looking for what the difference would be.
In the contribution? Yeah.
I can't do the contribution at this time, but if we remove the improvement measures at the snowball, the total cost of the project goes down to 1.558 million.
And where is it now?
Option 1 is at
2.3.
Denny, do you have it on that slide?
Yeah, but I don't think it goes down that much.
That's for everything, right? Is that the windows and the parking lot lights? That must be the whole package of the snowball.
Yeah, that's
right?
everything. Yeah. That's what I thought you were Are you talking about just the geothermal?
Just the geothermal only.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were thinking of getting rid of the whole.
Sorry, I misspoke. That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
So that's option 2, correct? In
No, option 2 just takes the roof off.
I'm sorry.
So option 3, if you take option 3 without the geothermal,
that's it.
That goes down. The project size goes down
100. If you're not going to do the boiler either.
Well, I guess that's the question, and that's what I was just about to ask. Is because if you don't do the geothermal, then you're still doing a boiler, right? I mean, or unless you're going to stick with what's there and hope that. I mean, it's way beyond its life. I mean, that's the problem. So if we were doing option 3, and option 3 had the swap out of the boiler as well, then the difference in the cost would be 500 grand. So
option 3 numbers are only taking out the geothermal and putting in a boiler and a heat pump, right?
Yeah.
No heat pump.
So right now it's option 1 is 86 in the new figures. I think that's right. And option
3 would be 53.
53. So 86 from 53.
33.
So we're talking a $33,000 difference for that first year's payment or something in that area.
Not the first year. The first year would be different.
It'd be different, but over average, we're talking about a $33,000 difference, which is less than, when we're talking, it's going to be 190,000. It's a much smaller figure to go to look at. And is it that important that we take this out at a time? And I guess the question I have for Denny is, how does this change? I guess we're just changing the option. Does it change anything for you in terms of moving forward or anything like that?
No, this is your decision. You guys get to pick. That's what the beauty of this project is you pick and choose what's going to be in this project. I mean, the one thing that I will say though, just in addition to though, and Bob, Audrey, we didn't really get a chance to talk much about this, but we've been talking about, additional incentives that we might be able to get. I talked to Bob briefly about it, but anytime the project is bigger, which option 1 would be, you're going to get more incentives in this. I don't know, Elmer, do you remember what the additional incentives potential was? I want to say it was almost 40 grand or.
Correct. So Efficiency Maine has a custom incentive program for large projects. And actually, we need the geothermal in to be able to apply for it. It's not a guaranteed amount. So that's why we don't want to put it in the cash flow too early, because then, then if Efficiency Maine denies it or changes them out, everybody is kind of planning for it. So yeah, we're applying for over $40,000 for custom incentives from Efficiency Maine that would only be applicable if we added option 1. The other 2 options will not allow us to apply for that money because it falls below the required MBTUs of savings for those programs.
And then if we put in a boiler because we have to do something, and then we want to move forward with the geothermal down the line, we've sort of wasted the money that we put into the boiler.
That's correct. Yep. I mean, the geothermal system, the big cost difference over other heating systems is the well field. And yes, we're designing the well field and installing the well field large enough for expansion or, tents or different options there. So, that well field would be usable in many different options that the town would pursue at the Snow Bowl.
Right. And just any comment to the, this is obviously Siemens is guaranteeing numbers here. And at the stage of design they're at, that's a bit of a challenge, of course. Historically, what has occurred with performance contracting when you actually glean the sharper pencil on savings and costs?
So what's the question?
You know, we're looking at these numbers
Yep.
of savings, and it's the cost of the project, which is reflecting so many dollars per year. Usually, what I've seen for contracting is the savings are, because you're guaranteeing them, you're not going to be,
Right.
doing
Right.
too much. You're being conservative at this point in time. They could change.
Oh, yes. No, you're absolutely right. Yes. So yeah, the numbers we use, of course, we're guaranteeing these, right? And there's no change orders on our end. So we're going to definitely be conservative on what our numbers are. And if it exceeds, of course, you guys get reap the benefit of, however high it goes. There has been situations which Colleen and Elmer would probably agree, where, it exceeds 10%, higher than what we expected. We just don't know until, it's in there and it's actually, we're taking the readings, but it can happen for sure. We're not going to do anything that we feel like we're going to be borderline going under, that's for sure.
Yep. And we did a study a while back, and Siemens was running right just under 15% excess savings across the board in Maine and New Hampshire projects there. We, when we were actually talking to the state of New Hampshire, we did a study of how we were performing, and we were running right just under 15% excess savings.
I mentioned that to Mark's point, because typically the history of these kind of programs, because of guarantee, is the news is typically somewhat better than what we're looking at.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. It's a good point you're bringing up, because if it holds true to kind of where Elmer's, those numbers are, then you're going to see additional savings that we're not even predicting. So
it just at this point, they're not guaranteed.
Right. But you guys would get them. I mean, if whatever comes in higher is straight to you. We don't see it. Thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to try to drill down a little more on sort of what I think Audra was getting to. Audra, is your major concern the that lease purchase payment, $190,000? That essentially, when you brought it up, I do have a little bit of concern in seeing that figure come up, as it's just going to be in a few months here. If it's in the fiscal year 21 budget, the budget committee is going to be talking about that in a few months, and I do worry that that's a big chunk of change to be talking about when we're still going to be in this sort of COVID mentality to be sending the budget up by. So I just would like to know if is there a way to stick with option one and realistically stick with the geothermal and put it off to a portion of phase two that will have an effect on that number, or is it just not feasible? Because if there's a way to significantly reduce that number, or even delay it by 6 months or 7 months so that it's in fiscal year 22 instead of 21, to me, that would make a big difference.
So I was just kind of pointing it out because I really don't want it to be a surprise to anyone, when we're preparing the budget, that it's going to have to be in there.
Right.
I think that regardless of which option you pick, the first year is going to be the year where it's going to be, because of the fact that, we won't necessarily see the savings up front this year. We're going to have to account for that, but that would be regardless of the option. And there are some things that we can do around that. And it'll probably come down to another use of fund balance situation.
Right.
And it's really just a matter of prioritizing what we want to do this year. I think that, this has been something we've talked about for a long time. There's a lot of things incorporated in this project that just have to be done anyway. Like a lot of the roof on the Opera House, that's a perfect example. That just has to be done next year, regardless of, anything else going forward. So I do think that given all the different needs that we have for our facilities across the entire town, kind of kicking this can down the road is not, I don't think it's an option. And I do think going with a performance contract and going with Siemens is the best way to address the wide variety of needs that we have and tie in some of the goals that we have in terms of energy efficiency. So, what I was bringing up was more of just a consideration and just wanting to be very upfront about the budgetary impact for FY22. And, you know, and the best, not the best, but one of the ways to mitigate it is by breaking this project up into 2 phases. But there, you know, the sort of potential downside to that is that by breaking it up into 2 phases and some of the bigger ticket items like the geothermal system going in a second phase is what Elmer was pointing out, we would sort of miss a potential opportunity for incentives. We would miss historically low interest rates. You know, I can't guarantee, like maybe in 2 years we'll have just as low interest rates, but I wouldn't bet on it. But you know, the flip side to that is the budgetary impact of the first year and everybody being very sensitive to that because of, you know, the impact that COVID has had on the local economy. And so I just want to throw these all out there. Like, I don't envy you. You're the decision makers. This is sort of the different things that you need to grapple with and kind of coming up with an idea for how we move forward. But I am strongly in favor of moving forward with some form of a performance contract because there's just so much that needs to be done regardless.
Well, you're making very good points, Audra. Allison, you can hand up.
Yeah, what if the project costs turn out to be lower than expected? Say we, you know, learn something that means we don't have to do a certain part of it, or it just comes in under budget. Do we realize those gains, or is that a Siemens
No,
benefit?
you guys get all those gains, and the additional incentives that we could potentially get would also go directly to you, not to us at all.
Okay, and then just the other quick question, when talking about us being the decision makers, my experience is that we're not, and we don't get to make any real decisions on our own. And so my understanding is that there have been some discussions about how we can overcome the issue of us, needing town meeting approval and the fact that we can't commit the town. We cannot commit the town to this, even if we all vote yes today.
So,
go ahead, Audra.
All right. So we've gone back and forth about this a lot, and I think there's still some work to do on this. But in the contract with Siemens, and you know, Bill just kind of got it today, so he hasn't been able to really digest it and kind of, you know, work on what he would recommend. But they do have a non-appropriation clause. And the performance contract is set up so that Siemens takes on all that liability because it's at the end of the day a lease purchase agreement. So, and I think this is one of the reasons why they like doing these kind of projects with school districts, with towns. It's because all the risk, the financial risk, is on Siemens. But I think that they know that school districts in town, there's a very low chance of us not paying. So that's kind of the reason why we would have the or you're in a situation where you're the decision makers and we have the flexibility to move forward. Certainly Siemens knows there's a risk that at town meeting, the lease purchase payment, that $194,000 that we're talking about, could be voted down. But I think from their experience working with municipalities and school districts, they know that that's not a very great risk. So in regards to that sort of non-appropriations clause, like I was saying, you know, Bill hasn't had a large amount of time to sort of look over it. And I would recommend that, you know, any sort of action you take, it would be subject to final approval by Bill and myself in terms of that language in the contract, so that, you know, you're comfortable that Bill believes it satisfies any requirements that would allow you to move forward.
Makes sense. Mark, Mark didn't hand up.
Yes, we can discuss this all night, but I'm ready to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we okay option 1 and move forward with that. And based on what Audra said about Bill's comments about how the contract gets detailed out.
Oh, Mark, would you mind being specific about whether or not the library's included as well?
I would, yes. If we went to split, I would like to include I had a conversation with Nikki as well after you did, and I would like to include the Camden Public Library as part of the deal, because I think, in talking to Nikki, they need to get this work done. They're and have more problems than actually the town does. And they need to get it done and get it off their plate because they got other things they need to focus on. So yes, I would include the public library as well in this contract.
Second, and in theory, some of the details I'm still a little bit curious about, such as, is the proposal to put this in the budget and then have people vote on that every year, or is the idea that we would have a 17-year contract or whatever it is and have that voted on by people?
So in effect, what you would be doing tonight is approving us moving forward with the performance contract.
Mm-hmm.
And what will be voted on at town meeting is the appropriation, and that would sit within the debt service section of the budget for the lease purchase agreement.
I guess it feels like we should all, to me, it feels cleaner to have the townspeople vote on a multi-year contract because they can, the legislative body, I believe, can commit the town to a multi-year commitment. And then, then it would be in our budget every year as well, but that just being upfront with everybody, hey, we want to, do this multi-year contract. It seems like it would just, to me, work better and be a little bit more clear.
I have to say, I don't think we can do that because I think a lot of Siemens costs are upfront. And we can't sit there and say, we're going to agree to the 17 years and then after 3 years go, oh, no, we're not going to pay for.
No, that's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying, they don't have to, do they need to move forward on getting work done before we can have an annual town meeting or a budget process?
I believe so.
Yes.
To meet the time frame, yeah, it would definitely to meet the contract time frame in the period of the contract. It would need to start in the beginning of the year, right after probably New Year's.
Right.
Okay, well, we can't do that. We have to have a special town meeting.
Well, Allison,
Right?
no,
Sorry, I must have misunderstood.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of doing it, but I don't understand what budget, where in the budget would we be paying for it right now?
Well, no. Okay, so there's the contract you don't have to bring to town meeting because of the way some clauses in it that put all the financial risk and liability on Siemens instead of the town. Like I said, we've gone back and forth with this, and you can make it subject to final approval by Bill and myself, so that he's making sure that it satisfies all requirements and that you're not putting yourselves in difficulty by doing something the legislative body should be doing. So I'm just saying, like Mark's motion, have it subject to that, and you're covering off on that side of it.
Yes,
there is a down payment component of this project that we can use other money from other projects that have been budgeted in the past that have energy components to them that we haven't spent money on, like some of the HVAC upgrades at the public safety building and the library as the down payment, so they can start moving forward. And then when you go to sort of annual town meeting for budget approval in the spring, that covers off on the lease payment from year to year.
Okay, what's the down payment and when do we have to make that?
The down payment is based on the contract. I'm exactly done Denny can answer, but just to be clear, we have in our budget $35,000 for the.
It's about 75, Bob.
Yeah, and it was the money that you guys had already had.
$35,000 in the public safety building and $40,000 in the library. Those are current budget. That's where the $75,000 down payment comes down. As to when that's paid, I suspect that's all part of negotiation and discussion of the contract. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes.
When is that paid?
When is it paid?
Yeah.
Would be paid, I believe.
At signing?
At signing, yeah, most likely. Yeah.
And when is that?
Well, we in order to keep the timelines that we have now, would be before year end.
So
Okay.
yeah, once you, if you're able to make a vote to approve it, then Bill and I would put all of our energy into, reviewing the contract language and making sure that it satisfied everything that we needed satisfied, in terms of, the question around authority of the select board versus legislative body to enter into this sort of agreement.
So we would be essentially voting to take 35,000 that was allocated for the public safety building, plus 40,000 allocated for the library HVAC, and authorize that to be used as a down payment on this larger project.
Yes.
That
Cover those portions of it, yeah. Yep.
and then you will get started on all of this right away for the most part.
Yeah, the
And
beginning of the
then
year. Yep.
we would have people approve it in June
Mhm.
for any, for the additional portion that we need to pay. And if they don't, if for some reason it doesn't get approved, then we will have lost our down payment. Or would we get that back?
They would have started work.
What's that?
You would have started work by then.
Yeah, because the non-appropriation clause is for the, the funds being, so if you come up and said that the risk is basically on the banks that's involved in this, whether it's us or another bank that's selected, which would be this week, I would assume, the risk would be on us basically at that point. Because if you say, no, we're not doing it, we're not doing anything at that location, then that's on us.
But you would have already started work and we would have already given you $75,000.
Yeah, I would have to double check. I mean,
real
do
quick,
you know when that's due?
Yeah, well, real quick. So jump in. We're calling it a down payment, but it's really would be that it's those funds are appropriated to pay for the part of the work. So you're not actually going to pay any money until work is completed. So if it's ever stopped at any time, the money's spent. So there'll be an approval process, and it follows AIA, American Architect Institute of America, kind of payment structure there. So it's not really like a down payment. You're not sending Siemens a check for that money. It's being appropriated to pay for work that'll be completed as part of the project there. So and Audra will approve each billing there, and so as those are approved, then the money will be paid. So the work will be completed before you'll spend any actual money. Will go to the bank. You're just appropriating it to say they'll be part of this project. You're not sending Siemens a check for $75,000.
Right.
Is that in addition to the annual payment of 190 or something that's going to have to go in the budget?
That's for the first year. It's not every year 190. That's just for the first year.
But is it 75 plus 190 for the first year?
Yeah. The down payment. No, I'm
No.
Seeing nodding and shaking.
No. So it'll be 70. It'll be 75 for this year, which is FY21.
Right.
Which we can pay out of reserve funds, and then it'll be the 190 for FY22, and then every year after it will be the 79 plus 13, 77 plus 13.
It's 86 plus 13.
It's 86, and then you'll have
$100,000.
About 100,000.
But to Elmer's point, I've heard the 75, the total 75 is library and public safety work that's going to go ahead. So it's not like we're going to lose the money because they're doing the public safety and the work on the library, and that's part of the down payment in those two. Correct?
Okay, that's what I'm sort of worrying about. We wipe out those accounts and then they work on the parking lot lights at the Snowball, and then people tell us we're insane at town meeting, and then I don't think that's going to happen. But I just trying to understand.
It's a good question. It's a good question, but no, it wouldn't be like that.
With all that said, Mark, why don't you just clarify your
I
motion?
just, yeah, I want to clarify the motion that the motion is to approve the contract for the town and the library for option one, with the condition that Bill and Audra have to go over the contract and affirm that it's doable for us.
I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay, let's have discussion and Audra, make sure that motion sounds correct to you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I just don't like the motion
Want to
because
give you some other language around the contract side of things.
I'm just not willing to give up right now any say in what the process is going to be going forward and how we present it to voters and whether they get a chance to vote on the contract too. Or I want to be a little bit, I'm very supportive of the spirit of the motion, but.
I agree with you, Allison. I think I don't pretend to be an expert here, but I'm sure in the future, Art and Bill can help us and discuss whether, to your point, whether this should be approving a 17-year lease purchase agreement in June, or it should be approving just a chunk of money in June. I think that conversation should continue. As to what I don't think we have to specify at this point what's going to be on the ballot in June. Is that what you're saying, Allison?
That's precisely what I'm saying.
Okay, that's good. Any other comments, board or Audra, on the motion?
Yeah, I guess.
Bill is so quiet over there.
I feel like I might need some level of specificity and Siemens might as well in order to move forward.
I wonder if Bill has a thought on how it should be phrased.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to look carefully at him.
What specificity do you want in terms of the contract discussion?
Well, yeah, I don't know if we can be loosey-goosey about whether or not you're approving the contract. That's.
I don't think he said we're approving the contract. What I heard the motion to be, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, was the motion to accept option one for the town and the library and give you, Audra, and Bill the task to make sure the contract covers a correct appropriation clause that protects us from any problem come June back. Does that sound better?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I guess yeah, okay.
What does Siemens need? I mean, what do you need to get started working?
We need to sign the contract.
Who?
The town.
You?
Well, you would give me the authorization to do it.
Right.
And you want, in order for you to do that, you would like a little bit more specificity.
Exactly, yeah.
So you're not just like, well, okay, I think they said yes.
Right, and I mean, I'm fine with you doing it subject to Bill and I confirming that that you have the authority to give me that authority, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think Bill's a pretty discerning guy, and I'm pretty sure he'll speak up along the way if something doesn't work out. But I'd also like a chance to just get an update at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's before we move forward with the down payment, I will bring that back to you all to officially.
1 second. 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I had disconnected myself. Anyhow, Audra, what words in Mark's motion do you want to correct or emphasize?
No, I think Mark's motion is fine as it is. I'd just say that if the last thing I was going to say was that I can come back to, I'll certainly come back if there is a problem and we can't move forward with signing an agreement or we needed, any sort of additional action from the select board. But I'll also come back, like another milestone for your involvement will be approving the down payment, because that is coming out of those two reserve funds.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I don't see any, I think you would do that anyway.
I do it anyway, but I just want to remind everyone that would be part of the process.
I think that's perfect. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Oh, sorry, Bill had a.
Oh, sorry, Bill.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Bill.
So Yeah, I think Allison's right. The select board's not going to sign a 17-year contract without having it to approval at town meeting. That language can be written in a variety of ways. I want to clarify one thing because we did have a 30,000 foot conversation last week, Bob and I, with the folks from Siemens, that we're not really approving. When you say you're approving a down payment for a 17-year contract through prior appropriated funds, I thought that and you might have said this, but you guys were sort of talking all at once, and I think it's the idea, but is it, are we clear that the idea is that the appropriated funds are going to be used for the purpose of the appropriations as previously appropriated?
Correct.
Yes.
So while we're calling it a down payment in terms of getting the project going, let's have the record clear that the select board is not agreeing to appropriate money, give money, commit money right now. You're doing that consistent with prior appropriations for the purposes.
Right. That's correct.
Funds are appropriated. So everybody listening.
That's correct. A good point, Bill. Good point.
Yeah,
Very clear. Very succinct. That's a very good point.
Right, not the parking lot lights of the snowball.
Exactly.
The HVAC system and the public safety.
I'm glad you clarified that because it's very important to the public and to make sure that they know what we're approving. With that, I'm going to go for a roll call vote to Allison.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Mark Ratner.
Yes, aye.
And Bob, aye too, 4-0. Thank you. Great questions, very complicated. Thank you, Siemens, Colleen, not so much Denny, and Elmer. They did all the work. And I also want to emphasize one side point I didn't want to bring up sooner, that you should understand. We should all understand, the public should understand, because I've been asked this question by the public. How much have we spent for what Siemens has done to date, which is a lot of design work, a lot of team effort to get out here and do all these things, and the answer is zero. So keep that in the back of your head as we go forward. Performance contract, just a data point. Again, thank you so much, Siemens. Thank you for your diligence in helping us to find all the problems we have with our infrastructure.
No problem. Thanks for having us. We're excited to work with you guys. So yeah, we'll move forward.
Thank you, and good evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right,
And
have a
just
good night.
we have hours more of this. You get to leave now.
Yeah, for the next item we have on our agenda is the approval of the Magenta Cook Rowing Club license agreement. And Audra, just to be clear here, I believe this agreement is exactly the same as previous years, except for the $500 contribution they've included. Is that correct statement?
That is correct. Oh, and also, these didn't make it into your packet. We'll put it in after the fact, but I just wanted to say we did receive quite a few letters of support for the renewal of this agreement. Hugh Brock, Carrie Edinger, Jay Bratz and Eric Buck, Trish Coburn, Robert Short, and Dominic Piccone all sent through letters of support for Magenta Cook Rowing Club.
Great. Let's see. I think I can see Magenta Cook Rowing. You don't look like Magenta Cook Rowing, but this must be Anna. I think you might be muted. Let me get you unmuted. Hello, would you introduce yourself to the select board, please?
Absolutely. My name is Anna Goodale, and I'm a graduate, a 2001 graduate of Camden Hills, but recently moved back into the area and took the role of executive director at Magenta Cook Rowing last November. So that's who I am. And just to clarify, Bob, we actually have 3 small tweaks in the contract. Yes, one is just to replace the word wood with wood or aluminum for our dock or our boat storage. We are hoping to add a line that says to install a stairway or similar structure because our ramp to get down to the water is, to get onto the dock, we have to go over rocks and all kinds of funky stuff. So just to make that wording appropriate to what we are actually doing on site. And the last one is to update the lease agreement to reflect what we are currently using. In the last 4 years since this contract was written, the program has tripled in numbers and has grown a huge amount. And with that growth, the need for space. Our boats are big, they take up big space. So what we've done, and if you look at the supporting documents, you can see the landmark map of the usage that we are actually currently using versus what the 30 by 60 square is. And what we've done is pretty much tucked ourselves into every nook and cranny that we can outside of that cleared setting. So what I would like to do is update the lease to reflect the whole usage that we are, knowing that we're not clearing that land. It is not cleared land. You know, we are not planning on doing any more cutting of trees or anything like that, but want to make sure that the communication between the town and Magonacook Rowing is accurate, and that we are very upfront about the actual space that we are using.
Okay. So am I hearing that there's a suggestion that some minor modifications need to be made to the document we have in our packet?
No, that the docket in the packet lists all 3 of those very clearly, and then has the actual supporting.
You're just clarifying that those were changes from last year.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Allison?
Hi, Anna, thanks for being here. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about how somebody would become a member of the rowing club, what kinds of costs there are, what your membership consists of, just some basics like that?
Totally. So our mission is to make rowing available to anybody and everybody who wants to row. So we have programs ranging from junior high athletes all the way up to 75-year-old people who either know how to row or want to learn how to row, so of all abilities. And one of my big passions about the sport is that I really believe it changes lives. It shows people how strong they are, and it doesn't matter whether you're 12 or 65 years old and learning the sport. It's an incredible journey to be a part of. So we are in the process of becoming more visible, I think, in the community, which is something I'm really, really excited about, so that people know that we are available, and that we can accept. I mean, like, we have an open arm policy. Essentially, we try to keep our prices as low as possible for our constituents. We are a 501c3, so we run on a very tight budget, and it all goes back into the program. We have a very supportive scholarship fund. So the goal for Magonacook Rowing is to not let money be an issue. Don't let money stop you from getting on the water and being active and becoming a part of the program. So it's really quite wonderful. We have before COVID happened, this was a very weird year, as one might expect, but we had about 50 young athletes that were in our competitive programs that were traveling around New England and competing at regattas. We had about a 25 person masters group that kind of were just involved with the program. And then the kind of culmination of this COVID year was our summer, where we had 120 different rowers come through the program, which is record breaking for us. And we were really able to take the restrictions around COVID and utilize them and get people out on the water in singles. Which was really, really neat to see. And I think that Magonacook Rowing became a safe haven and a really wonderful release for a lot of people to get out, be active, but you have 13-foot oars keeping you from anybody else around you.
Great.
So yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you so much. I didn't know some of that,
Appreciate
and that makes me feel really great about it.
Are there any other select board questions? If not, we will revert to ask for a motion.
I would move that we approve the agreement, the lease agreement with Magonacook Rowing Club for the upcoming year.
Second.
Motion made and double seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Taylor?
Is that Bill?
Yeah, Bill had a.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
Just so the motion is correct, it's a 5-year license, Allison, not just for the year.
Oh, we're not allowed to do that.
I thought it was a 7-year license.
7-year?
Yeah.
We're not allowed to do anything more than a year.
I think the original license that was done 4 years ago is a 4-year. license. I don't know if things have changed since that time. And I suppose that's up to you guys.
Because of the revocable opportunities, Allison, you technically, yes, you could revoke it in a shorter period of time, but this is the third time this agreement will be done in. Anna, did you just say it changed to 4-year? I thought it was 5-year.
My understanding was that it was 4. I'd have to look at the actual lease agreement, which I don't have up right now to
I think it was 5. I believe it was 5. But-
Cool. I'll go with that.
I mean,
We have
it's just so inconsistent with the way we do things.
No, this is very consistent with many of the license agreements in many of the public infrastructure rights of way and various things we do revocable licenses for. They sort of sit there active and effective until there might be some event which requires the select board to cancel them on relatively short notice.
3 months. 3 months notice.
Right, so that's why they don't.
On our toes.
It is a 5-year, Anna, you were correct, and it is a 3-month notice of cancellation, just for the record.
All right. Well, I don't know how that factors into our yacht club discussions, but another day.
I know, I would agree. I asked that question earlier of Audra, and I was confused too about our limitations. Bill, we're okay with approving this 5-year with a 3-month notice to cancel without getting ourselves in any kind of a problem with the charter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, 3 months, it's technically meaningless then. Because
yes,
next year, a different select board could say, okay,
cancel.
this was not okay, or
That's
so, but
I suspect that's the legal crux of your question, Allison, because I had the same confusion. Roll call vote on the motion. Taylor.
Aye.
Allison.
aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And Bob, aye. Thank you, Anna. Go for it.
Thank you. Come join us on the water anytime.
Love to.
When
Thank
it
you.
freezes.
Not tonight. Okay, onward and upward. We're talking next to the approval of, I believe it's 10 applications for commercial fishermen's float permit applications as listed in our packet. Any discussion on this action for the 10?
Yes.
Go ahead, Allison.
Is anybody new?
No,
All 10 are existing?
all 10 have been with us before, correct?
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It feels like we need to do a little bit of work in the area of keeping a handle on debris and things left around the floats. And so I don't think we need to put anything in a license agreement necessarily, but that we could, there could be some improvement there. If I see any more zip ties, for instance, it just, we just need to be a little more conscious of the things that are left behind on the docks. And by we, I mean the fishermen. But I'm glad they all want to come back, and that's great. I love seeing them all. And I appreciate that you've made an effort, Steve, to find ways for there to be more activity during the winter and for some of those boats to, come in and leaving as many floats as we can. And I think it actually makes a difference even for just little things like winter tourism, just to see the liveliness down there and, trying to do whatever we can to make it feasible to use that harbor year round is great. And I know that isn't always the easiest path for you, but you're always willing to take on a new challenge and more excitement down there. So
sounds good.
That's appreciated.
Good. With that said, do I have a motion to accept these 10 applications for commercial fisherman float application?
I'll make a motion that we approve the commercial fisherman applications.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion. Not hearing any. Roll call vote. Taylor.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And Bob, aye. 4-0. Thank you. On to item G, which is the approval of the FY 2021 harbor fees.
I would move that we table this until another time because I haven't examined it carefully enough, and I thought we were trying to get into the habit of doing all the fees together. So I just feel unprepared, and there are some changes that I would like to propose. But it will be a bit of a longer conversation, possibly. So could we table until next time or till?
Well, I'll ask a question. Do we want to, does somebody want to second the motion? Do we have a discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second discussion. Audra, I wanted to ask you in this regard, what is the, to Allison's point, the schedule, the need to address the harbor fees tonight versus a next meeting or so?
There is no need, and it should be FY 22.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I would prefer that this is done as a fee order of all the departments.
Yeah, I would agree too. And this is probably my bad because I think it was Janice asked me if we should put it in. It's not her fault. I said yes, so it's my bad for putting it in. Mark?
Quick question, and going over it as I did, I know the one change I noticed that I saw was a pump out fee for the day sailors. And I just sort of curious why that's happening, because we always did free pump outs for people.
We talked about that before. That was supposed to already be in there.
We did. Yeah, we did.
As part of their license agreement.
It is. It is part of the revised license agreement, the new license agreement. I agree. All right, well, I have a motion Audra, just for discussion purposes, when would you like to have this done?
Well, we typically do it in January so that we have it for budget preparation purposes.
Okay.
So you can table it until January. You don't even have to specify which meeting.
All right. All right. So the motion to table this item and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Taylor?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Bob, aye also. 4-0. Thank you. Item H, approval of the disposition of 7 Willow Street. Just an update for everybody. I think last time we discussed this, we did table this action item. And at the time we discussed the possibility of doing a workshop with the 4 presenters, our proposers. Since that time, I believe, Audra, you have done some surgery in terms of asking specific questions of, there were open items on some of those 4 proposals. Is that correct? And
yeah,
you've received answers. So with that, maybe you I just wanted to make that for the record that was the procedure we took to get to this point of hopefully making a decision on which of the 4 proposals the board would like to consider for the disposition of that property.
Yes, and I think probably the first thing that it would be useful to address tonight is the proposal by Matt and Allison Heath, because I know there's, a lot of support amongst the community for that. Matt's a very valued staff member, but there are some complications around that. And I invited Bill to the meeting because I think that since they're pretty significant concerns, it would be really important for those to be sort of addressed so that community kind of understands, why that's something that the select board can't entertain. So for that portion of it, I think, I'd like to have Bill explain it to you, and then we can sort of go through the other ones and I can tell you where they're up to, and that'll sort of narrow things down and give you a better idea of what your options are.
Counselor, you're unmuted. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I feel like I'm out of control here. Somebody keeps unmuting me. So yeah, the simple concept here, folks, is that as much as the select board may wish to, in your discretion, dispose of this property with or to an employee or person who participates in the town in some positive way, the trouble with that is it effectively results in what we'll call private, or what is called private gain, where an individual is pointed out, or not pointed out, but picked out to, in a way, be the winner of what could be significant value essentially given to the individual. I think that's highlighted here, as I understand it, in the difference of bids received by roughly, as I understand it, the Heath bid is somewhere around $20,000 or $25,000, and an alternative bid was somewhere in the $80,000 range. It's hard to find a different conclusion other than if the select board voted to deed the property to the Heath, it's anything other than a gift of some significant value for private gain to an individual. And that's just not allowed. It's one of these things where you have to, while the article in the town meeting that authorized the select board to dispose of tax acquired property in its best judgment, it doesn't mean you can do that in avoidance of other principles that you have to follow. So that's the premise behind it. As much as it might be a great idea, there's clearly here a significant benefit being conferred in comparison with the other bid. And that's problematic if a single individual or two people benefit from that. You know, who wins around something like this happens, it puts the select board in a very difficult position, which no one intended, but it certainly does for future practices as well. So that's sort of the long and short of it. And just to put a finer point on it, select board members would likely, if challenged, be technically responsible for the value of the gift given to this individual compared to the other bid. That's how strongly the law says you can't favor people with such gifts of public property, because at the moment it is public property.
Right.
So that's hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Right.
Anybody intended anything, but that's some of my job is to point these things out.
Right. Audra?
So I think that, you know, sort of given the reality around the challenges with that, you know, kind of looking forward, you really have two options, because we haven't really had any luck in getting a lot of response from the Pine Tree, I forget what they're.
Pine Tree Real Estate.
Pine Tree Real Estate. So really it's kind of two options. One is, you know, Habitat for Humanity's proposal. We did follow up with them to answer some of the questions that you had around what's the intent with the property, with the actual structures. Is it going to be to demolish them and rebuild, or is it to renovate? And so in order to answer that question, Tia Anderson, the executive director of Habitat, brought her construction supervisor to the property, and they looked at it and were very positive that it was going to be a rehabilitation project because it's in such good shape. And that's reflected in an email that she sent to me. And also, given the amount of time that property has sort of sat, it would be a priority for them. So they would they would recruit another crew and have them come and start work on that property as soon as possible. It probably wouldn't be until the spring, but it's something that would be a priority for them and would be done within the next year or so. And then, you know, the question about affordability and perpetuity, you know, Habitat has a number of different mechanisms they use. One is a contract between them and the families that, you know, they enter into agreements and financing for these properties. And another is, you know, deed restrictions and other things that we've talked about. You know, they've learned a lot doing this across the Mid-Coast over many years. They've had a few scenarios where some of their properties have fallen out of affordability because of, you know, broken agreements with them and some of their families, and, you know, just other things that have kind of led them to doing things a bit differently. And I think that, you know, because they've learned a lot through it, I'm pretty confident that, you know, affordability and perpetuity would be a major goal for this particular property. So I can answer any questions about that, but also, you know, we had some, you know, follow up with Dan Ford as well. And he, you know, he's pretty practical about he wants to do whatever he can to try to make this affordable for as long as possible. And he expressed a willingness to enter into an agreement with the town over a 15-year period to try and keep that property affordable. You know, he would also like to make sure that, because his vision is, it to be a rental property that he owns and manages, and he is very committed to it being a rent that's affordable for, a working class family. So, this really sort of comes down to, what's the broader goal for the select board? What's your sort of goal in terms of affordability? Because I think there's a lot of benefits in the habitat model, but I know affordable rentals around here are also a goal. I think the benefit of Habitat, it's an organization who they're mission based, and their goal is affordable housing. And Dan is a private individual. He needs to have a financial incentive around taking on a project like this. But I, believe he's sincere in his commitment to affordable housing, and that's why he's offered to work with the town and enter into some sort of agreement to, try to keep it affordable over a long period of time. So, those are the two different, I think, proposals that seem to have some validity for all of you at this stage of the process.
Thanks. Mark, go ahead.
First off, I want to say it's like, I totally understand. I totally get it. Would have loved to have helped Matt, Heath, and his wife, but I totally understand that that's not something we can legally do and appropriately do. In talking, I had a conversation with Bill about it just to double check this afternoon. And one thing he mentioned is we had checked the appraisal of the building, and the appraisal is above what the other offer was as well. The appraisal was in the $170,000 area, and the other offer was for $85,000. So we would be, I still think we would be, giving quite a distinctive property to somebody for much less than is appropriate, which is a shame, because I understand, that everybody wants to help. So I would think that the best way, and to guarantee that it's affordable property, affordable housing for, forever basically, is to move towards Habitat for Humanity. And I would support that.
Thank you, Mark. The comments, Taylor or Allison?
Yeah, I personally think that rental housing is probably a greater need. At the same time, I think that the bandwidth for the town to be able to come up with a model right now that can guarantee long-term affordability via a transfer to a private individual like Dan, that our ability to do that is probably limited right now, and that the property really needs to be moved into other hands so that it doesn't continue to deteriorate. I would love to see if we could work with Habitat to make it possible for that to be some kind of a multi-unit option, or whether there's an accessory apartment in the garage or something like that. Maybe that's something they can actually already do. But I would agree with Mark that it's great that Habitat wants to take it on, and that is the best way to, have confidence right now that it will meet the goal of long-term affordability to the best of our abilities.
Okay, Taylor, anything or?
Yes, definitely. I mean, and just looking at the two between Habitat and Dan Ford's proposal, it really is a tough one. And I think that for me, it just comes down to Habitat honestly being an easier decision for us to make, given that they're a tried and true household name when it comes to precisely this type of thing, and affordable housing being the headline of what we're looking for. And they're literally in the business, for lack of a better term, of affordable housing. But it really is a tough one. And I think I think it's really important to point out that we need more people, more developers, contractors like Dan. He's put in so much work, and his willingness to be adaptable and flexible to try to make something like this work, to possibly build a duplex and rehab an old property like this is really encouraging. And I think that as part of a greater conversation as we move forward and talk about affordable housing more, if we do end up giving this to Habitat for Humanity, that we really need to think about how we can encourage more people like Dan Ford to continue throwing their hat into the ring for things like this, because they're precisely who we need to really make this work as a bigger community goal.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. I would agree with all of what you said. I particularly also when you talked about the need for rentals, I think that's huge here because fundamentally, my experience with affordability, the biggest challenge has been not only the cost of the home, but the down payments for that home, because most people aren't sitting with, into the 5 digits of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank are ready to go. And that's a challenge we all have. It doesn't mean that affordability should not be our objective. It should be. But I think there's probably a combined strategy, which probably not going to be solved by 7 Willow Street, that has to look at the rental options for people who are just having difficulty getting on the bus of ownership. But I would have to say I think with their experience the Habitat has, I think the transition of the property and getting it moving forward would probably, my guess would be more rapid, a smoother transition. They're probably used to, I believe, Bill, this will probably be a quick claim deed, I suspect, on this property. Yes, he's shaking his head. I'm sure they're very experienced with the ins and outs of quick claim deeds and et cetera, et cetera. And I think you made that point, Audra. So, Jeremy, you had a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Allison mentioned something and just about the attached barn. When they talk about rehabilitating, Allison, they cannot rehabilitate the attached barn. Structurally, that's too far gone. The main house obviously is in great condition. It's very straight, sound. So that is staying. You mentioned that. I just wanted to clarify for you that Habitat cannot save the barn to make that a house. There's just too much investment involved in doing that. It's structurally unsound. They really need to rebuild that whole piece. The house itself is staying. It's not really, it's connected by just an overhang, a covered walkway. And that in and of itself is twisted sideways actually, because the barn is falling.
Yeah, I've actually walked through there with numerous contractors and gotten opinions on the barn.
If there's enough
that were different than that, can we at least? So this is where we've at least got to have it not taken down with like an excavator throwing lead paint all over the place, and would like to be able to put out some kind of a salvage some of that barn wood or work with. I know Tia and Habitat are totally aligned on that kind of thing, so it shouldn't be a problem. But I just don't want it to turn out that like Public Works shows up there with an excavator and is clawing at it one day. And
understood. I know you're passionate about this. That's why I wanted to mention it, because you did mention they were going potential to put another unit in the barn.
Right.
I understand, and Tia is lead remediation will be the first thing that they do on the property. Just so you know.
Thanks, Jeremy. With that, Mark.
Ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we approve the 7 Willow Street to be presented to Habitat for Humanity, or however that legally needs to be said. Bill,
you're going to convey it to them.
Convey it. We convey 7 Willow Street to Habitat for Humanity.
Second.
Motion made in second. Discussion. Not hearing any. Roll call vote. Taylor.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye. And I would like to say, I should have said sort of during discussion, I would like to thank Dan Ford and Matt Heath. Absolutely. And for really trying to do great things for the town. It's just the circumstances, and especially I think this is important for the neighborhood who's lived with this house to be empty for as long as it has, and we need to step up and get this done.
Bob's vote is aye also, and I would underscore what you just said, Mark. It's absolutely true. Thank you. Before we go on to the next agenda item, Janice, you told me we had a couple of comments on YouTube from previous items. Do you want to read them?
Yes, they were from David Dickey. Sorry, I didn't notice them earlier, but they're all from him. I'll just read them all at once because he's left several. Said, spend money to make money usually works well in a normal world. The world is not normal world right now. Revisit this in another year. I'm canceling every contract I can get out and renegotiating. Must be warm in the conference room. Bob is there himself in a dress shirt. Another giveaway. Lakefront, which is limited in our town, just got given away again. May not be relevant, but the camp, keyword camp, across from the free boat float, just sold for $1 million.
Cool. Thank you very much for catching those. I wish we caught them sooner.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to our last item on action, which is the approval of the step and grade plan for FY21, which is commented is actually already been approved in the FY21 budget. You want to explain briefly to the public?
Bob, I'm going to step away for just a moment. I will be right back.
If you must, we'll wait.
I must.
I'll start singing music here or something, or take my shirt off. But we'll take just a 5-minute break. Don't laugh, Audra. You have glasses on.
I was gonna say maybe put a parka on, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the, just to point out, I'm actually in the Opera House as well, in the Tucker Room, and I am freezing cold. I don't know that
I'm
there
in
is.
my office and I'm cold.
It's cold here too.
My nose is cold.
It's cold in the room, the temperature wise, but I don't get that cold that easily.
Bob's pretty tough.
I don't know about that. I think I was once when I was 10, but thank you, Janice, for catching those.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I should have noticed earlier.
No, we try to be responsive. I know it's difficult with YouTube, but we don't want to ignore people who are trying to participate.
Bob, I just remember Magenta Cook is offering $500 for the use of that property. I know it may be a little dollar amount, but they are offering something this year.
I mentioned that up front.
Yeah.
Mark's back. Okay, we're talking.
I thought it was 5 minutes we were getting, but no.
Okay, what do you want to do? Sit here and look at each other for 5 minutes?
No, I don't want to hold things up, but I
No,
should have just gone right away.
Go ahead, Audrey. Allison, go ahead. We have a couple more minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. You can actually start talking. I just need to go plug something in.
Well, I just want Audra to give us the message it wants.
I can hear Audra from, it's fine. Just
Okay.
go.
All right.
Really, this is a belt and suspenders thing. The pay grade plan that was used to prepare the current budget that we're in reflects what's in your packet. So this is more of just a formality that would make the finance office just feel better that we've dotted every I and crossed every T in regards to the step and grade plan and the select board's approval of it.
Basically, the step and grade plan is extending the step and grade plan beyond 25 years. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, well, there's other changes that were made that we talked about during the budget process.
Right.
Like there were a number of departments where we changed the pay rates, and there were a number of employees that changed from one step or grade to another. And then also extending the scale past the 25 years.
Right, which we didn't have before. It goes up to 30 now, I think.
Well, we keep going every 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, you're looking for motion just to approve that step and grade plan as included in the current budget.
Correct.
I will make a motion that we approve the step and grade plan that is in the current budget.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. Discussion. Not
This is
hearing
kind of
any.
like when we approved the wastewater bills that went out 2 months ago, but
Uh-oh. Okay.
but it's fine.
Roll call vote. Taylor?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Bob? Aye. 4-0. End of action items, and one discussion on update as it is on the established priorities, which is the Charter Commission. We have a discussion on the status and approach. Audra, I know you actually met with them in the most recent meeting. I know, Bill, you met with them a number of times and certainly talked with them quite often. Maybe you could start off by bringing us up to speed and where we are at, and we can discuss a status, and then we can discuss any comments from the board as a whole, as approach. Also, I wanted to emphasize that one of the reasons for having this on the agenda was at one point the commission had asked the select board for comments on certain drafts of some of the changes they were recommending, and I quickly and discussed this with some of you. My individual comments are not relevant. It's the comments of the select board as a unit that are relevant. As individuals, we can comment like other individuals in the town. Residents and voters can do in part of this process. We just should discuss what that is contemplated right now. But I wanted to make that clear. That's the fundamental purpose of discussing this right now, I believe. Go ahead, Audra.
Well, I guess, if I could kind of summarize where I think they're at right now, they're really at a juncture where they need some broader community input, and they need some help wrestling with some of these bigger questions, which is the whole point of having a charter commission in the first place, is trying to figure out, is our sort of current form of government working the way that it should be? Is it meeting sort of, our citizens where they're at currently? And I just feel like they're really struggling with that because of sort of COVID. And I think they need some help with sort of the community engagement, public education side of this. And I think that, it's at that point where, if they're not able to do that, then they're going to be put in a position where they're going to be making a lot of decisions on their own. And I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of going through this exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of wanted to put that out there because I think they need help. And I think that, the select board's in a really good position to kind of chew over what might be a good approach. Maybe it's like advising them, maybe they put things on pause for a little while and pick it up again when, the pandemic's over and they can engage in a certain way. Maybe you can give them suggestions on, things that they could do or ways that they could, reach out to the community in a more remote format. And I just think that, some encouragement to really dig into these bigger, broader questions and do it in a way that people who aren't traditionally engaged in town government understand and can participate and can offer input is going to be really, really important because, until I think we're able to ask questions of the broader citizenry in a way that they can understand so it's more relevant to them, we're not going to get very meaningful or useful feedback on how well things are working for people as they stand now and how they could be improved going forward.
Okay. Good points. I don't know where to start with this, but I think, I didn't see anybody's hands raising up, so I'll jump in, but okay, Alison, why don't you relieve me of the burden?
I mean, I'm happy to go at any point. I certainly have.
No, go ahead, Alison.
So I've spent a good amount of time watching a lot of the Charter Commission meetings. As many of you know, I was opposed to forming a Charter Commission because I felt like we didn't really need one for some of the things that were being proposed. We don't technically need a Charter Commission to look at typos or little changes here and there. And I just felt that we didn't have the bandwidth to really be tackling whether there's a better form of town government. That said, since the commission was formed, it was very much, as tends to be the case, the people that were willing to serve on it were the ones who found out about it and the ones who understand what a charter is. And by default, a lot of people who already understand the importance of a town charter. So we have people like Deb Dodge and Lowry with this really deep knowledge of the town, and really nobody on there that kind of comes from the outside a little bit. one of the themes that keeps coming up in all of their meetings is the need for education, so that more, we get more people involved, and we want people to understand how town government works and have people show up at the annual town meetings so that they can get engaged in how their money is spent on the budget and all these things. But I feel like not having anybody on the commission that is already kind of uninformed, or that is coming from the outside, it kind of colors the range of options that are considered. And so what I'm hearing from people a lot is a frustration with how the disconnect between how apparently progressive and anxious for change a large portion of the population is here in Camden. There's a really big interest in doing things for affordable housing and addressing climate change, and we are constantly explaining why things have to move so slow in Camden. And the people that really want to be involved on a lot of these things, we see it with the watershed school, for instance. They've done this awesome work. They come to us with proposals. They say, can the select board pass a resolution that says we're going to meet our, X, Y, or Z climate goal by 2050? And we say, well, you can join the town budget committee and present to them, and then show up at town meeting. And then you can help us once we get this on the warrant. There are 15 different things that have to be updated. And I see just the spark go out of people's eyes a lot of the time. And to try and explain, well, hold on, I thought we elected you guys to be able to do some stuff, but then you're telling me I have to show up for 15 meetings. And then if I can't get to the annual town meeting, plus the 14 public hearings that preceded that. And by the way, some of those happened at the planning board, and we're sorry that we didn't manage to get that on the Facebook page, but those notices appeared in the Camden Herald. It is a full-time job to try to stay up to date with town government. And so I look at what, and especially now that we have even more new people moving into the community. If I grew up here and I couldn't figure it out until, I went to the public schools and did all this stuff, and still didn't even know what a town charter was or how we voted on the annual budget until I was 30 years old. I don't think we have a lot of hope during COVID of, a mass influx of people coming into Camden and just really getting excited about the process the way it is. I hope that someday when I'm not on the select board, I'll be able to elect somebody that can, people that I believe will, mostly be working toward certain things. And I feel that we end up crippled by the fact that to get anything done, so much has to be explained to the general public. So all that is to say that I've watched the Charter Commission meetings, a lot of them, there are a bunch of little things that seem good, cleaning up language and maybe some stuff with the personnel board and dealing with the way things are written. And we're really lucky to have people willing to do that. What concerns, so I've thought, well, it can't do any harm. But what I'm starting to see is that they are adding in a lot of things that I think are actually going to make things more difficult. More, ideas about when we would sign things in the select board, financial controls and growth management, and who, the planning board is going to be the one that looks at the comprehensive plan. And we have to do that every 5 years. And then one thing that really stands out to me is the budget committee. So I see that in some ways they're saying we're going to double down on this form of government, which may be really time consuming for the average person to follow, and we're going to try to just educate more people about how it all works. But at the same time, we're going to make it possible, instead of having to have 21 people on the budget committee, which some have felt in the past was too unwieldy, they want to get rid of the requirement to have 21 people and allow them to just to be, I forget whether it's 7 or 9. Right. And they're going to do away with term limits on the budget committee. So just the same people can continue to do it, and it's a smaller group. And so for me, one of the only reasons I got involved in town government at all was because the town was forced to look outside and say, geez, we got to get 21 people. We'll take anybody. I guess we'll take Allison, even though she's been, uninvolved. And so that forces us to look outside of ourselves occasionally. And that's one of the only ways we even get people to town meetings. So at the same time as they're saying, well, we're going to just double down and keep going the way we are, they're also going to make it easier for us to have a smaller group of insiders involved. So I would strongly advocate that, because of also all of the COVID problems, I personally think we could do excellent public input sessions during COVID with no problem on Zoom. But the Charter Commission doesn't feel that way. Since judging from the last memo, they want to move forward with just in-person sessions, which inevitably is going to exclude a lot of people. And a lot of those people that are going to be excluded are people that might have kids and aren't going to drag their kids with a runny nose to the Opera House to give input on the town charter. So we're going to miss a lot of those people anyway. And so what I'm hearing from other people too, that are asking me, hold on, what is this Charter Commission I'm hearing? What is the town charter? I'm hearing that some people think we may be missing an opportunity to really look more carefully. And so I would like to put this on hold. Not that I actually don't think that we have any power to do that, but recommend that we need a different approach. So I'm concerned with the direction things are going in. Thanks for listening.
Of course. Taylor, your turn.
Yeah, I agree with Allison pretty much entirely, although I do believe that the budget committee should be halved. Yeah, it's sort of a catch-22, because it's interesting that COVID has forced us to do so much stuff on Zoom, but as tough as it was for us to get up to speed, it took a long time for us to get to speed to make this really work efficiently. But I have found that in strange ways, it makes people more accessible in some ways. And I think Allison sort of hit the nail on the head there. So I do feel like perhaps it would be a missed opportunity to get those people that are not normally involved and don't want to come down to the Opera House or whatever for a boring meeting for 2 hours, might be able to stay at home, log in, say their piece for 15 minutes, and log back out and go back to their lives and still be heard. So I would be interested in us at least keeping that in mind. And I know the hybrid model is really frustrating for all of its own reasons, but just thinking about that. But yeah, I think we have to put it on hold, because we're not in a place right now, or suggest that we put it on hold. We're not in a place right now to get input online, and I do think that getting as much public input as possible is crucial.
Yep. I think all good points. I think, Allison, you hit a couple of nails in the head for me, not the least of which is, one, the commission is technically an elected body and they can do what they want, blah, 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 but I know they're also listening very intently. I think I continue to blame myself and us in town government for not doing something more progressive to try to better train or inform people of, especially now. People are asking me all the time about why didn't you do this? Well, we can't. We don't have the authority, because we're a town meeting form of government. It's an education, and people have learned a lot, at least ones I've spoken to, about the frailties of it. And we do need to get that information out there, because if it doesn't change with this Charter Commission, it probably is going to, as time goes on, out to some other form that meets with the times. As far as the commission goes, my attitude is that's why we've tried this hybrid, and the reason why the conference room, because whatever we do in the future with whatever form of Zoom electronic, there are individuals who do want to come in person, and there may be more individuals that want to be on Zoom because it may be easier, to Taylor's point. I don't see the window of, given the current situation, of when that can occur, because most people I know aren't coming. There's a few, but two of us came tonight to the conference room. But They couldn't make it. But that's the limit. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for numbers of people. So that kind of bodes through the, let's not push on this important pedal too hard until we have the opportunity to have input from both electronic as well as in person, because I do think it's important. But if we do have that delay, I hope we wouldn't waste that time and utilize it, us included, to do a little better job of informing the public as to the challenges of the town meeting form of government. And just conceptually, what are the other forms that are out there, which I know, Bill, you've reviewed with the Charter Commission a number of times, and we all kind of know what those are, but we're immersed in it. And I agree. Now, maybe the public's not interested in the ins and outs of form of government, but I still think that doesn't relieve us of responsibility of trying to inform them of what occurs when, especially when you have an executive order situation as we have today, very unique situation, that it's magnified because of the inefficiencies of the town meeting form of government. None of them is perfect. None of them, but we know that city councils have their problems and hybrids have their issues and town meetings, etc. But it seems to me, in my mind, if we can at least allow the public somehow to come in person as part of the discussion in conjunction with electronic, I think we'd probably be pushing on this rope is a little difficult. I think we're putting the Charter Commission in a tough spot. That's what I feel. Again, I'm all about, I don't care if it's 2 people who want to come in person or 10, we've got to affect that part of our community too, as you all know. So I guess we're all kind of the same page, to your point, Audra, about, we're kind of at a crossroad. And we may, my concern is we may be forcing something to go to a June ballot, for example, that may be a tripwire for the town because of the lack of strong public input. I think it's very important. We all have our opinion. Alice was talking about the budget committee. I would talk about some other elements that they're contemplating, but those need to be brought to the public. That's where it really has to happen. Audra?
Well, and also, like, if we're going to commit to doing something, we need to do it right. And it's not every year that a town elects a charter commission and looks really deeply at the way that they organize themselves and govern themselves. So, if we're going to do this, I feel like it, and we've already put all this sort of time and energy into it, staff resources, myself, Bill, other staff members, the select board, I think, has put a lot of time into reviewing stuff, providing comments. And the Charter Commission has put an incredible amount of time into this already. Like, so I just think that it would be a real wasted opportunity if we aren't giving or aren't doing what we can to sort of grapple with the bigger issues and really try to find out what the citizenry thinks is working and what isn't working.
I would be remiss in not underscoring what you said. They have put a phenomenal amount of effort. They've done a lot of homework. They've, started down a path, and they found it, it'd be better off taking a little angle off that path. I think you mentioned personnel board, personnel committee, lots of things that I've heard about. They've done it, but my concern is we're at December 15th. The rest of this year is lost. It's Christmas time. And then what are we talking about for putting on a ballot? March? I think
they wanted an extension that would not this. I forget when the exact date was.
I think it's March something for a warrant for the June ballot. Yeah, we're given the times. This is not the time to be pressing something that doesn't absolutely have to be done. Especially given the times we're in right now. We're all frustrated and trying to do our best to get things done, but we're not as efficient as we were when we could run down the street holding hands. We're separated, we're split shifting, we're doing all kinds of things that causes complications for us. And Taylor mentioned learning how to do better on the electronic world is absolutely true. There's still challenges there. We still need to improve there, and we will, hopefully next month. I think we're kind of pushing on the rope, but use that time period and this time to explain to the public why there were challenges. It's an educational process. And I think part of that responsibility belongs to us as town leaders. Mark, did you have your hand up?
Yes. It's real simple. This is not something that needs to be done quickly. There's no rush. There's no hurry. It's not a race. We're in a particularly difficult time. People are having a difficult time dealing with their lives right now. This is not a time to get to see if we can get extra input in order to rush something through. I mean, I just saw a statistic today that with all the voting that happened in this last election, all the people that came out, there's still 80 million people in this country that didn't vote.
Correct.
A lot of people are just not engaged,
Correct.
not involved, and it takes time to educate and do that. And it's especially difficult to reach people right now, especially because there's no one source to go to and say, this is the place you can go to see this. So I think, we've got vaccines on the way. We should buy, if we were to move this to a November vote, and we're talking about it for an August or warrant, we may have a better chance of having more people show up and be involved.
Yeah. Part of it sounds pretty like the consistency is that the select board has recommended we don't push on this rope, and that we, talk to the charter commission and give them that opinion. I think it's pretty consistent. If we rush it, I think we're gonna cause a problem.
Great.
I would say that the only thing that would sort of possibly merit rushing would be a charter change that would allow the select board to act on behalf of the town without, having a full special town meeting all the time. So if there's an urgency, then to move forward on issues, what we've seen here is it's crippling to us if we want to do things and we don't have a way that we feel good about holding a special town meeting. I mean, we could say, all right, I read the guidelines from the MMA for what they recommend towns do if you need to have a special town meeting. And I was like, oh, here we go. There's gonna be some cool online platform and it was like, stay in your cars and you can hang your head out at certain times. And it was nothing inspiring. And that the people that could show up for something like that, you really have to wonder whether they're going to be representative or not. So the only reason I would see to rush it would be if we were moving in a direction that allowed for greater flexibility, but this does nothing so far but take away some flexibility.
Well, no, they have addressed, I'm trying to address, as I understand it, some paragraphs they're dealing with bills, very complicated. We don't want to get into the details here because there's too much time, but trying to figure out what can be done in an executive order situation like this. But you know what? We're kind of already there, and we're kind of hopefully, I'm hoping someday in the next months we'll get beyond that month, but they have been considering that and to try to help. And that's one area that would help the select board. But I think that's a very complicated one, and they're just wrestling with it. And that's one that may take a little bit more time to analyze. But I think bottom line is, Audra, we need to just get back to them and tell them the results of the select board. One second, Bill. The select board and what its general feelings are, I think, are pretty consistent there. Bill, go ahead.
Just wanted to reference the statute that might help you as you think about this. So the commission has certain authorities and there's a procedure that's statutorily driven. So here's what it says about extension. The municipal officers may extend the time limits for the preparation and submission of preliminary and final reports of the Charter Commission.
Okay.
Up to 24 months after the election of the commission. If the extension is necessary to 1, properly complete the reports, 2, have them printed, or 3, obtain the written opinion of an attorney. And it will be somebody other than me because I've helped the Charter Commission. But those are the 24 months, those 3 things, very general category: to properly complete the reports, have them printed, or an opinion of an attorney. And
that 24 months would bring us to June of 22. Is that correct? Or June of 21? June of 21. No, June of 22.
Right. So just to give you the timeframes that the statute allows, that's all I wanted to mention.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, Audra, I think we've beaten this little devil. I think we have a great discussion points to have with the Charter Commission. However, you want to do that, and but we can work on that. But
Can I just say one quick more thing since we have
Sure.
Bill? I feel like we haven't gotten enough input from Bill, and I know some of this is a philosophical or opinion thing, but having seen the town over, a long period of time and the evolving goals and nature of town government, and having seen many towns and different forms of government, I think we probably should have started with a serious talk about, just whatever you would be comfortable sharing with us in terms of observations. And if that could happen at some point, I mean, you've seen a lot of different models for town government and some recommendations to us on ways that different forms of government or different processes either help or hinder different types of goals, I think would be really valuable to us and to the citizenry and to the Charter Commission. And I feel like maybe we really haven't done that.
that's a good idea. But that's part of the educational thing. We did it on an open meeting, just a general discussion about the models that are out there and the pros and cons of the models, and have a general discussion. I think we could do that in the future. Sure, why not? I think it's a good idea. Great. We got a couple more items I'd like to get to, and not the least of which is 3 discussion items usual, but there's one that starts off under committee tasks and assignments. Audra, part of this discussion is driven from the perspective of the efficiency of town staff, and maybe you could give us a little, the elevator speech as to why we're bringing us to the table right now, and kind of the backdrop.
So typically by now the select board sort of would have gone through the process of, annual committee appointments and, figuring out who's termed out, who wants to re-up, who needs recruiting for additional members, and that is an incredible amount of work for Janice to sort of administer the committee membership and who needs new members and who's terming, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it got us all thinking as well. And this is something we've been talking about a lot, the challenges to, the remote meeting format and the amount of time involved amongst staff in, facilitating the remote meetings. And then further, kind of, how everybody's time is pretty constrained given all of the, not only trying to move forward and implement current projects we have in the environment that we're in, but also just the day-to-day operations of the town and, keeping things going in an environment where, we have to work very differently than we did before.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that all of that sort of necessitated a discussion about, the current role of the committees and the amount of time it takes to sort of sustain them as they're currently set up and in the current environment that we're in, and some of the challenges around that. And I mean, just to kind of give you an example, and I don't want to pick on any committee in particular because this could happen with any of them. We've got, some committees have been really successful in advocating for projects, and it's meant that we've got money in the budget to implement these projects. And for the committees, that's sort of like the end of the road. We advocated for our project, the town appropriated funds. Now that kind of falls to me and my staff members to implement those projects. For us, that's just the beginning, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I think once the committees have sort of moved on from that and it's handed over to us, a lot of them are kind of on to the next thing. And that isn't something that really can be just left alone. We still have to support them in stepping stuff through the process. So we're just in this perpetual churn where I don't feel like we can ever really keep up because there's so much work that's constantly being generated that, we're just not able to keep up with it. We really need to focus on implementing projects. And I think, a good example, the streetlight project, I think most people would think that's over with, and it's not. We're still doing things to kind of fine tune that and continue to implement it and make sure that it's a successful project. It's not quite finalized. And, the Siemens project, as soon as that contract is signed, we're going to be implementing that project, and that's a lot of work. So I think that, there's others, there's a number of infrastructure projects in the downtown that we're currently working on implementing. And so I think that we all need kind of like a bit of relief from the constant churn of projects and the pace that we're going at, and focusing on doing what we've already committed to doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Allison, you put your paw up.
I don't need to go before anybody else. I'm just letting you know that
You were
when
first.
you're ready.
You're first. Go.
Did you? Okay. I wholeheartedly agree with Audra. One of the most glaring examples for me in terms of how easy it is for the town and town staff to become diluted was as the planning board was reviewing the Lyman Morris project. And we all said, gee, wouldn't it be great if we had updated our zoning ordinance so that it was adapted to sea level rise? This is an example of, and Jeremy, I see you turned on your video. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm blaming us, because it is so easy to have, all of these good ideas, and we want that instant gratification of the inspiring, heartwarming, interesting presentation from watershed students, and then the grant that the town gets to look at this or that, and that all feels really good. And it's a newspaper article, and it's like rah rah rah, the town cares about these issues. However, when we're constantly going in this, okay, well, let's do this and let's do this and let's do this, what we're missing some of the just grunt work of saying, all right, now somebody needs to be able to lock themselves in their office for the next 3 months and update all of our planning documents and come up with suggested zoning ordinances that would implement some of the things that these committees, frankly, for years have been saying the town really ought to look at this. And we have a backlog of things like the comprehensive plan, for instance. There's a recommendation in there that says affordable housing is a crisis in Camden. A task force should be, developed right away. And we kick ideas around about housing trusts and how to really effectively tackle this stuff. But then sometimes the committees who are great, they come up with great ideas that nobody wants to say no to, and nobody wants to discourage these little things here and there that could make a difference. But it's a kind of death by a thousand cuts, and we're missing some of the really big things that we actually need to move forward on, like updating our comprehensive plan. And so I feel like we've created this structure where the mechanism for being involved in town government is like to join a town committee, and we just kind of repeat that every year, and then the committees get formed, and then we never take any of them away. A lot of towns will, when they form a committee, they will develop a sunset date right away. And so that it's project-based and it's accomplishing something, and then people can go on with their life. But we are so hungry for public engagement that we say, well, we never want to end a committee, we'll just form more. But then also that sends the message that the only way to be involved in town government is to join a committee. Meanwhile, we have a lot of other people who are eager to be involved in just like these project-based things. And I know we all get emails from people that give lots of awesome input, whether they're on a committee or not. And I'm eager to bring up those things, whenever we can. So I feel like we are in some ways excluding a bunch of people from being involved because they can't commit to a full committee. And at the same time, we're wasting other people's time. So before we go and do this next round of like, just asleep at the wheel. Let's reappoint the, all of these committee members. I think we need to take a hard look at, even just at all of them. Somebody said to me the other day, what's wrong with you? You guys have like 21 committees on this website and, with suggestions for more. So I think we need to scale back so that we can be more effective and recognize that this isn't the only way for involvement in town government. And to say to some of these people that are on committees that are so willing to participate, hey, can we get you to participate in some other way? Like going to the county, for instance, and monitoring really any one of their meetings that nobody has time to do, but they're, they've got all kinds of energy problems there, and they're building buildings, and who's making sure those are energy efficient. And I think we just need to be a little bit braver. And so my point today would be to let's hold off on committee reappointments. And
Sounds good. Any other comments, Mark or Taylor, before I make my comments?
I'm wholly supportive of a leaner, more efficient town government.
Say what?
I'm wholly supportive of leaner, more efficient town government.
Thank you.
And he says it so concisely too.
Okay, I like concise. Marco, do you have a comment?
Not tonight.
All right, I wholeheartedly agree. I think I need, in knowing understanding Audra's position, we're oftentimes putting committees in a very a position to fail, because they do come up with your point about great ideas. They do, and they're all good ideas, but when they come to us and we can't execute because there's too much on the plate. And I've seen committees get demoralized and say, the select board's not listening. And that isn't it. We are closer to anybody understanding what Audra's the first, but we're the second, of knowing what the backlog is, knowing what staff is doing. But I have seen inefficiencies in and we don't have the budget, will not ever have the budget to hire more staff to do more. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, we have to control taxes and et cetera. But I think, when you have 20 some committees, if each one of them comes up with one idea, you got a problem. You can't process this. And so I think it was one of you said to me, we have to be laser sharp about how we allocate our resources to what we're having to focus on. So what's been the history? We tried modifying the policy regarding committee guidelines. Some have followed, some not, trying to focus the work scope. The next step was to have the scope of work presented to us on an annual basis. We tried that, did some good. But then we also discussed, not so many weeks, a month ago, about the task force kind of approach, which Allison, you kind of alluded to, is saying, hey, you few committee members, you have expertise in here, and you have expert. Maybe it's a mix and meld. I think that's essential. We're doing that today with broadband, as we all know. We have a task group, and when the broadband thing is done, the task group will go away. I'm classically, I was on the Route 1 North Committee chair for 3 years, and then that committee kind of went away. And by the way, last week the project went away. So it was, with Audra will announce that in a few minutes. Neither here nor there. I think you're right. We going into the business as usual to approve the same old in a committee meeting about committee membership is just not the next step, in my opinion. We are behind on that. We were supposed to have done that typically in July. That's well past because of lots of reasons, but I think the underlying reason is we've got to get more efficient and figure that out, and it may take some creativity, and we got to get to that point. Oh, by the way, and none of us, everybody understands we're criticizing any person on any committee anywhere. They're all doing wonderful things for the town of Camden. It's just the collective good is difficult for us to process through operations, Audra and staff. We just can't get it done.
Well, and I'd just say, I think that we're just in a situation now where it's a little bit demoralizing for everybody involved. Like the select board has these big, broad goals that you're not able, you're all the same people that have been here for, at least 3 years now. And, the progress you've made on a lot of these bigger, broader goals is, I think it's a lot slower and more minimal than what all of you had wanted to do. So that's demoralizing for you. It's demoralizing for committee members who have all these great ideas that they feel like they can't get any traction on. And it's demoralizing for, me and my staff members, because we feel like we're never spending our time or effort on, we just feel like no matter how much, we churn through, it's never enough. And kind of the more you do, the more that's expected of you. And that's just difficult. And I just feel like, we've been building to this point, and I think the circumstance that we're all kind of living in now, these unprecedented times, has made it even worse. So I think that we need to kind of really rethink about how we're doing things, and just use everybody's time a lot more smartly than we have been.
I agree. Allison?
I would just say really quickly that I have seen recently in town government with the committees an example of committee work that is, for me, has been incredibly helpful to be able to watch. And that was when that's CDOC and the reviewing of the tannery proposals. So that was, we all thought long and hard about how we wanted to do this. We all agreed we could really use some input in this area, and the advice that they're giving and the conversations and questions that are coming up through this really critical review of the proposals, combined with cross-referencing that with town documents, it's just exactly what you would hope it to be, and it will be really useful to us. And so trying just to give tasks to groups of people in areas where we are well positioned to be able to make good use of that work is really, what I want to try to focus on.
Good point. Audra, it seems like, somehow to get some action going here, but we just can't let it sit for another 6 months. We, as the town manager and the select board, have to do something more surgical to look at how we can, look at each committee group and see how we can better utilize the talent there or the function there. But we just can't, continue to talk about it without, taking some action and documenting those and discussing maybe a few committees at a time in select board meetings or something of that nature. I want an action out of it.
I would be happy to sort of go through all of the current committees that we have and kind of talk about current projects that we're committed to that are associated with each, and if there are any, and kind of where that puts us in the ability to provide additional staff support or any, just bandwidth in general, because it's also the select board. I mean, everything comes through all of you.
It really is. We are liaison also when we want to do our job there, but I think that would be a good approach. We need to have something, something to look at, analyze, and pick at. Mark?
It occurred to me that we're talking, we're keeping this in-house, and it may be a good idea to sort of look and see how other towns, other states use people that to help the town government.
Yeah.
Maybe there's ideas out there that, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
There is. I've seen them, and there is. Trust me, that's a good idea.
So maybe having some suggestions instead of trying to come up with themselves may be good.
Typically, most towns are at least on the western states, they're task oriented. They're task oriented kind of a strategy, and there are not many committees that live in perpetuity. They have to Allison's point, they don't have a sunset date, but they have a sunset a goal to accomplish. But I think that can be part of what you're talking about and writing about, Audra. And I don't want to beat it up real hard here. Again, we all appreciate so much. We have so many people in this town who are so dedicated to doing the right thing. It just boggles my mind. And I don't want them to think we're not appreciative again, but I know we're not. But I also don't want to abuse the use of their time, but that's not fair either. So that's the conundrum. So with that, why don't we go on to our last couple items, because we're getting into 3 hours here. Manager's report. Audra, you should mention about the Route 1 North also.
Yeah, I won't belabor all of this too much, because a lot of the stuff I've been spending a lot of my time and energy on, we addressed tonight. But the Route 1 North project has been suspended for the foreseeable future. There was just too big a discrepancy between what MDOT had budgeted for the project and what they got back for low bid, and they just couldn't value engineer enough out of that project to make it feasible. So that's on hold for the time being, and we're just kind of waiting for them to get back to us and let us know what the plan is going forward with that. Some other things that I just wanted to kind of follow up on. I worked with the group of people who showed up at the last meeting about developing rules for the skate park, and it was a really positive exercise. It was, everybody who was on that meeting, plus Katie Yuri as well. Everybody was great about sort of kind of the back and forth around, trying to negotiate a solution that would work well for the users of the skate park and address some of the concerns that, the residents on Alden Street had in terms of noise. And I think what we came up with is a really good starting point. I think that everybody's really practical that as things progress there might be some tweaking that needs to happen, but I really appreciate all the work that the people involved in that put into coming up with something that, nobody got everything that they wanted. So I think that everybody recognized it was a pretty good compromise that, everybody could live with at the end of the day. So really, really happy with everybody for helping me out with that, and happy with the result. Another thing, the EMS community determination project that we're working on with the town of Rockport and the hospital is sort of at the stage where all the data has been collected, both quantitative and qualitative, and they've kind of developed a few different, probably like 6 different straw man proposals for how we could sort of move forward, ranging from, status quo to, completely changing the EMS system and how it's delivered in a number of different ways. I think there's some things that need to be thought out a little bit more, hopefully before that project has moved forward a little bit more, because the next phase of it would be more of the public engagement and education around, sort of, what we have, what we could do, different options, and what would that mean for them. So I've talked with Mark and Taylor about this, as well as Chief Farley, and, we're at the stage now where I think we're all just kind of chewing on how we want to, make sure that the next phase of the project gets us to somewhere where the results of the whole entire exercise are going to be usable for us, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I hope that sometime soon we'll be at a point where Kevin McInnes, who is the head of this project, can come back to the board and kind of talk a little bit about what's been done and
great
where we're going to need to go and what sort of decisions we're going to need to make moving forward.
Audra?
Yeah.
One thing, I did leave a phone message for you today about that, so maybe we should talk tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else, Audra?
We're starting budget, the budget process. So department heads are getting their requests into me. I've come up with myself and the department heads have come up with a backup plan for snow plowing should both our public works crews have to quarantine or get sick or whatever the case may be. It relies on employees in other departments who were former public works employees taking one for the team and driving snow plows again. And believe it or not, we have enough people scattered across a bunch of different departments that we could come up with a third plowing crew. None of them will be happy about it, but I think if it's like a real Hail Mary if we need to do it. And the final thing,
I'm willing to learn, by the way.
I'll let them know.
Oh, goody.
The final thing. So I think that this could be interesting coming up and I wanted you to all kind of chew over it. So the proposal by the state legislature for a state electric utility, our senator, so through my crusade with the utility poles, I started up kind of conversations with Seth Berry, who is the chair of the Energy Committee in the legislature. And he was very interested in trying to garner support from municipalities for his proposal for a state-run electric utility. And as luck would have it, our senator and our representative are on the Energy and Utilities Committee. So at some point, I think maybe inviting them in to kind of talk about that. And
oh yeah, I can't wait.
Oh, this sounds great. Maybe we could get Seth.
I think Seth would be willing to come. He's
count me in. I love this.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I think it would be an interesting discussion, and it would be interesting to kind of understand a little bit more about how it could align with some of the Camden specific goals in terms of energy and yeah.
Maybe water too. Maybe the state could take over the water.
Yeah, they can take over the air too. Is that, Audra, is that the end of your report?
That's it.
Select board reports. Who has a select board report to make? Taylor?
I'm all set. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. And Marco?
Really quickly, just two things. Well, three things. Audra, I'm on board with having our representatives come in and talk about that. And number two, I've been talking about COVID every week. Vaccines are coming, and that's important. So, but please stay alert and stay safe. All summer, we had 2 cases in Knox County for almost the entire summer. Now Knox County has 85 active cases. And last Sunday, we had 32 new cases in one day, which is extraordinary and scary. And that means there's 32 people out there that could have been spreading this. So, please be careful. Please, let's just stay strong and stay careful while we wait for our vaccines to come. And thirdly, because Taylor is not in the conference room and not wearing a mask for the first time in a long time, we get to see his snazzy mustache, and I wanted to compliment him on that.
Yeah, I thought something died on his lip. Anyway, thank you, Mark.
Thank
Allison,
you. Thank you. It has a dedicated comb. Thank you for asking, Mark.
Allison.
Okay, I just have one quick thing, and that is that this is one of the town storm drains. One of the great initiatives that has been taken on by the Public Works Director, Dave, is that all of the storm drains are getting mapped out, and some of that work has already happened, and some of it can even be seen on the town assessing the GIS database. But what we see here is just an example of a very high tide down on by Fresh behind 16 Bayview, and what you can see here is the ocean, and it is very, very close to the top of the storm drain. And I mean, there's seaweed and everything. So it just gives you an idea of how close we already are to sea level rise having a huge impact. And I do a lot of monitoring of Harbor Park and when that overtopping happens, and it happens all the time, but I really hadn't been looking in the storm drains that much. And it's just really eye-opening and interesting. So that's it. And
okay. Is that it, Allison?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but I think we've had enough tonight.
Of course you could. But before Bill and I fall asleep, no, I'm only kidding. You know what, I want to thank you all tonight, because you're actually, it did take 3 hours, but you did a phenomenal amount of work tonight. We did a lot of stuff. That was a pretty aggressive agenda. So thanks for hanging in. And with that, I would ask our customary Mark Ratner to give us an adjournment motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn select board for this evening.
Second.
Roll call vote, Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye, and one more thing, Audra, those new glasses as well?
Yes.
I don't wear them often. I needed a break from contacts. And I told
They-
Bob,
they-
I'm sorry, I can't sit with you in the conference room because the mask fogs them up.
They
Thank
look
you.
they look wonderful.
Yeah, you look like you should be in a Harvard MBA program. Taylor, you vote.
Aye.
Bob, I also again reiterate, thank you all, Bill, to everybody. Did a lot of stuff tonight. Thanks. And we'll see
Thank you,
all-
Bob.
No problem. I'm
Thanks,
gonna fall
guys.
asleep right here. I'll take care,
And,
guys. We'll see you all
ha-
soon. Good
Happy
night.
New Year to everyone. And
Yeah,
see you
happy, yes.